heard a rumor that I was supposed to shave my head to be able to join the group. Is that true? Or
That is true.
okay. Well, I have the clippers here, but we might want to spend our time on the crack repair system instead of me cutting my hair off. I'll do it next time though.
PJ, is that a massage chair?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah. I don't work alone.
yeah.
I have
We have one
I
of
have
those.
I have a
Amazing.
RoboVac and the visits to the chiropractor. While I liked the guy and enjoyed spending time in his office, it was just I realized I could buy one of these.
I haven't seen my chiropractor since I got the chair.
Yeah, it's really it's a lifesaver.
Totally.
I try to take a break once a day and jump in there for 20 minutes.
Does
And
it?
this is my other helper down here. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, the robot
The RoboVac.
RoboVac, right?
Yeah, I put him in quiet mode for this session.
How often do you set that loose?
Oh, it goes out once a day.
Oh, okay. And how long does it take to get the whole shop?
Probably 35 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, this place is it's about 3,000 square feet, so
I
it's a
use
lot of work for that little thing.
I use mine to carry me to the massage chair.
Oh, that's good. Well, the vacuum just keeps going until it is going to die, and then it goes back and charges itself.
Are you on the vacuum right now?
Yeah, yeah, I have two. So let me know what I'm supposed to do and when.
Well, we'll give it a minute or two for any of the late stragglers. Oops,
Okay.
click something wrong here, and then we can get started. And at that point, the three of us will chat till we get to the tool.
Okay. So I can just say whatever I want.
Yep.
Okay. Then I'll talk about these drill bits
Okay.
because I have a friend who is a CNC programmer and designer, and he builds stuff for NASA and the medical industry. And he was helping with a project the other day, and I had these drill bits. Like this was full, and I knew they were kind of junky, but this stuff from China that I got cheap, and he went to drill a hole, and the hole went off to the side in this project, and he shouted some profanity, and I just threw them all, put them all in a bag, and threw them away. And so he's slowly refilling this with
Oh, how
old
funny.
with old drills from his machine shop. I have a lot of drills that are actually quite useful, but he's using these short drills, these little stub drills for most of the stuff that he's working on with me. See, I have more over here, and these are all pretty new. But when somebody like that comes to visit, I mean, I'm sure guys like that in this group, but that's not. Yeah, I'm moving in that direction more and more all the time. Upgrading my stuff all the time, but I'm still used to paying $5 for a drill bit, $2 to $5 for a drill bit instead of like 10 or 20. And so this is sort of a new thing for me. And I bought all the stuff I need to sharpen them. So they throw them out after using them for a short time because it's an ISO certified machine shop, and the specs are unbelievably demanding. Like nothing like we need to do for the work that we're doing. For the most part, I mean, they're talking about 0.0005 minimum tolerance. Here's a project that he made last year. If you can see that, this is a prosthetic ankle.
Oh my
It
goodness.
has a titanium top that screws on it there. So it's nice to have. He lives around the corner. It's really nice to have somebody like that in the neighborhood. I don't expect to be losing a foot or anything like that anytime soon, but I do have this in case I need it, or if any of you guys need it. And Ian, we were talking about, I sent you a picture of this. I thought I'd just update you quickly on how this is coming. And you said, oh, it looks like NASA. And in fact, you know, it's mostly my design, but my friend John is like, he gets me out of trouble when he says, well, that I don't know how that's going to work. And I said, oh, okay, good, because I didn't either. So this is as far as I've gotten after 200 or 300 hours of programming and designing. This is that saddle slot. I call it the saddle slotter, but you can kind of get an idea of where it is in the development.
Can you tell us a couple of the features? I was having a hard time making out all.
Oh,
features.
right. So yeah, there are some hurdles that are really tough to. This is the prototype, and so it's a little rough, but you can see this gauge on here. Can you see that? You guys see that gauge?
Yep.
So I'm still calibrating it, but if you put this Allen wrench through here and turn it, you can watch the gauge move.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that's moving the cutter in and out. Right. So if you put an 80 thousandths cutter in, you may want to go 10 thousandths one side, 10 thousandths the other side. And that's what this gauge is for, to help you dial that in with precision. The problem with most of the guitars I work on is they're through saddles in those vintage guitars. And so that's another hurdle that you have to get over in designing this. And that's what this is for. This is a lock, and this goes up and down to control the depth of the saddle slot on one end. Right, so you can go negative or positive with this. And this is a two-way set screw. It's left-hand, right-hand thread. So you put this is the wrong Allen wrench, I think, but you put the Allen wrench in there, undo the lock, and then you can rate. Oh no, that's the correct screw. Look at that. You see it going up?
Yep.
So you can control, you know what I mean about the depth of the slot on one side?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, right? Because you're sticking shims in there, and I really wanted to design something that would solve all those problems if possible. And then the last thing, which is about to happen, is that this is mounted on. I don't know if you can see that, but these pivot. So this is going to be mounted on a aluminum plate, and I'm going to put truss rods on the front and back, so you can adjust the curvature to match that of the top. So you know how sometimes you'll get a dip in the front in front of the bridge, and you have a bow in the back, so you can just crank the rods, which I just thought would be hilarious to put out a product that has truss rods on it. I figured you guys would know instantly what that's for and how to use it.
Sure.
So you can just dial the rods and adjust the plate to match the curve of the top. So if you want to do what I've been doing all these years, which is this, using this guy, simple jig, but it's what I've been using for 30 years, and I just vacuum it to the top. So I just hook it up to the vacuum cleaner, and it sucks right down. So that's kind of what I'm familiar with. And I wanted to offer that feature on this thing. So the plate will you'll have the option of vacuuming it to the guitar top, or it'll have rubber stops on the bottom you can attach and then clamp it if you prefer, and just keep the plate flat. But if you want to vacuum it on, which is sort of my preference, then you can do that. And this is going to be this is actually going to have. I just 3D printed this for the air spindle, but this is really what's going to be mounted on it, this guy. So it's really going to be set up with a laminate trimmer. I don't know if this will ever make it on the website, honestly. This is so much work. It's so many moving parts and pieces.
Do you have a sense of how many houses I'll have to mortgage to get this? Or
Yeah, well, I know. I don't know. Is Dave Collins? Is that his name? Dave Collins
Yeah,
from Michigan, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
yeah.
I mean, he was the inspiration really because he you may have seen that. Of course, he made one of these or made a few of them and actually sold a few of them. And I was desperately trying to buy one. I thought it would be really cool thing to have and to put in the archives. And I found one um, that had sold on eBay for $1,500, like right away. And I thought, oh man, I was sorry to miss it because I would have bought it in a second because I understood how much work he had in it. But I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. These linear bearings are pricey. I mean, the way that I made this more affordable is by mounting it on just one bearing, right, instead of two or three. So that helps keep the cost down. So if I can manufacture these other 50 pieces and get my daughter to assemble it, I may be able to keep it affordable. And then I still have to test it. You know, even after these hundreds of hours of all this design, I still have to try it out and get it out in the field. But you can kind of see this is sort of fun.
It's looking pretty slick, TJ.
Yeah. So this opening, this is another idea I want to test out. I may not have to have a truss rod on the back. I'm thinking about just putting a dial here and threading a screw down into another small plate that mounts on it, and that may be enough to just lift it to bow the plate in the back. And then I'll have a truss rod on the front, maybe just for fun. But the challenge now is to come up with a way to 3D print because I don't want to have to make it out of aluminum if I could avoid it. In fact, you can't make this out of aluminum because there's a one of my curved internal pressure plates inside here, and when you turn this, it clamps up against the router. So this I just stole this right off of the router bases that I make. But I'm hoping to be able to 3D print something that will hold some portion of this base because this is so beautifully designed. It's just incredible. This base blows my mind. I mean, even more than the router, but I'm hoping to adapt this base onto this plate, this front plate. So we'll see. That's next up. Got to test all that and try it. But
Are you changing to the laminate trimmer mostly for the base, or do you feel like the trimmer has less run out than the air tool? I found the air tool ran really true. But
yeah, I've never tried an air tool. I've never used it. You know, the part of the idea of my initial thought was to design something that my router bases would drop right in.
yeah,
Since people already have those. But then it just got out of control. And then I thought, well, it would be nice to be able to use a laminate trimmer if you want. Because I know a lot of people are used to their laminate trimmers. That's what I usually use. That's what I've used all these years, you know, these Bosch, these guys.
yes.
And it's a powerhouse. And you know, maybe I'll abandon the idea and just stick with this. I don't know. But I don't know. It's a crazy project and all a little out of control. I mean, part of the reason is because I talked about this a little bit before. I talked about it at the summit last year at the Fretboard Journal Summit. I said we keep getting up and doing this work over and over because we do this version of. It's kind of a strong word, but this version of lying to ourselves. So we say, oh, that's only going to take 5 hours or 2 hours or even 10 hours. And these machinist guys do it too. That's how I got into this because my machinist friend said, we'll be making parts in a week. He said, oh, this is right down my alley. I'd love to help with this. I showed him my design. He said, this is right down my alley. I'd love to do this project with you. And I said, great. So we started, that was months ago. And we just started making parts like 2 weeks ago. So, the machinist guys do it too. They do this version of fibbing to themselves. I mean, I can't be alone with that, right? You guys run into this. I mean, when he told me we'd be making parts next week, I believed him. It seemed totally reasonable to me.
I only live in a world of pure reality, TJ. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Well, I mean, we have to be like that, or we would just never do this work. We'd never take anything on. You know, it's
I wouldn't
we
do
got
that.
to, yeah, we got to get back up every day and jump back in with hope, and this project just reminds me that other people do it in other industries too. Everybody, as far as I can tell, except my carpenter and plumber, those guys,
Very reality.
they just keep charging. Like my plumber has never been here for less than $250. It doesn't matter what he's doing.
And he's always gone in 30 minutes.
He's gone in 30, exactly. And then I get the 250 bill. I'm like, man, what am I doing wrong? I should have gone into plumbing. Yeah, I just, partly it's because I'm old. And so my brain isn't wired now to think in current numbers. I'm still thinking in currency from the 80s. I realized this recently. That's part of my problem. I just haven't really got my brain on board with money, the value of money now. But my plumber has. He has not missed a beat. He's been coming here now for almost 20 years, and his rates just keep going up. So he's my mentor, and I hope to be more like my plumber at some point.
You should get him on here.
He's a great guy. I really like that guy. He'd be
on one of Doug's business roundtables. I think that would be good. Get a plumber's perspective. I bet they'd straighten us right up. Should we get going on cracks? I'm ready to go on cracks.
Sure. So yeah, I want to welcome everybody to the first episode of season 2 of the Dan and Doug Show. We are moving forward. We're going to change a little bit about how we do things for the D&D shows, partially just out of a necessity, because we had a tendency to like pick a topic and then dive down on every which way you could talk about a given topic, nuts or saddles or braces or whatever the previous episodes were, and some of them wound up running into 3 and 4 hours long, which is a little bit hard to do. It's a little bit it gets a little bit long in the tooth, and I think it was hard to commit that kind of time to it. So what we're going to be doing moving forward is each time we're going to get together, we're going to pick a subject matter, whether it be like today we're talking about top cracks, but we're not going to try to do everything there is to know about top cracks in one sitting, because that just takes too long and it's too demanding. So we're going to, especially with a subject like cracks, which there's a variety of not only different approaches you could take to it, but there's top cracks, side cracks, back cracks, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to revisit those topics from time to time and do more than one episode on them, and do what we always do at the D&D shows, which is try to get other perspectives besides just Dan's and mine, primarily because we live in this job that we do. And one of the things that I've discovered more and more, that the more young people I've met in this business, is that everybody learns how to do something, does something the way they do it because that's the way they learned it. And half of the time I'll ask somebody, well, how come you do it that way? Well, it's just the way I've always done it. Well, it's always been the way you've done it because that's the way you learned it, and you never had a different perspective on it. So that was kind of the goal behind this whole series to begin with. Bring differing opinions in, bring different ways of doing things, and different approaches to the same subject or the same topic. In our world, there are as many ways to skin a cat as there are cats. And for the most part, there is no right way to do things. There are wrong ways to do things, meaning you'd get the results wrong. But if you're getting the right results, there are lots of ways to get there. So that was the whole impetus behind this whole series to begin with of Dan and I doing these once a month. And we're going to continue in that fashion, but we're going to get much more tightly focused on each subject as we do it and try to be more demonstrative and so forth and so such. So with that, welcome to Season 2, Episode 1. Dan, welcome to our second season. You there? Can you hear me?
I'm right here.
Okay. And I also want to welcome TJ to his first appearance on a Dan and Doug show. Thank you for joining us, TJ. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, TJ.
My pleasure.
I wanted to have you on to kick off Season 2 because I got a phone call several months ago from my buddy Flip Scipio, and I picked up the phone. It was him on the other end. He says, "Do you know about TJ's crack system?" I said, "I know I've seen it, on like StuMac. It was available. I think it's available there, and I know I've seen it on TJ's site. I've never used it, and it always piqued my interest, but I don't know much about it." And he says, "Doug, get it. Will change your life." I said, "Okay, if I can't resist that kind of a praise, especially coming from somebody like Flip." And so I think you and I did a little horse trading up at Northwoods, and you were gracious enough to give me a set of the system, and I knew I could call you and say, "Okay, how do I use this?" But I figured rather than just keep it all to myself and keep you to myself, we would have you on the episode 1 of Season 2. So not only could you teach me how to use this, but you could teach all of us how to use this.
Right.
But welcome to the D&D show. It's really, really great to have you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, honored to be here.
So tell me a little bit about the impetus behind coming up with this, because there's lots of moving parts and pieces to this. Before we get into the actual whole aspect of how to use it, maybe you, Dan, and I could talk a little bit about cracks in general. There are certain things that I've heard from, especially, the younger cats in this business and also customers. When somebody mentions when you notice a crack on a guitar, there's lots of things that come up saying, "Oh, is it just a surface crack?" I don't know what a surface crack is. I don't, if it's a finish blemish, or a check in a finish, that could be what people are talking about. But for me, if it's a crack in the wood, it's a structural deficiency in the guitar that needs to be repaired. That's in my opinion. I know there are other people who believe in letting cracks live for as long as they can, as long as, quote unquote, they're not causing problems for a guitar. In my estimation, a physical break in the top or the back or a side of a guitar is only going to cause difficulties moving forward as the strains of strings continue to play havoc with a guitar's geometry. But so the way I've always perceived it is whenever you have a separation in the top, you now have two plates for at least the period of the length of that crack, however long it might be or however short it would be. And the challenges, of course, of gluing a crack or repairing a crack are, one, making sure that those two plates remain level with one another, and two, obviously, you have got a fairly small piece of real estate to glue. Do you want to opine on any of that?
You're talking to Dan, right?
Either you or Dan, anybody, either.
Yeah, better be Dan. You don't want to get me started.
Oh, okay.
Not yet. Not yet.
That sounds like a crack or a fissure.
Okay.
What about a fissure? That's a crack, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, if we're talking about in my opinion, if we're talking about a period of the top or a section of the top that is split, there's no good reason to, in my estimation, to leave it alone. I don't know what, you know, so as far as I'm concerned, structural repairs, structural problems on a guitar need to be fixed when they're found. Um, I don't, I don't know if there are differing opinions on that, but I'm open to having different opinions on it. It's, that's what this is all about. We're trying to come to the same subject from different angles.
TJ,
Um,
can I just jump in really quick? TJ, do you address all top cracks? Is that something that you feel strongly about?
Well, I don't have a simple answer, but
Okay.
it'll come out as we talk about the history of how this came about.
yeah.
So maybe should I just jump into talking about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, we can
Um,
talk about that a little. I'd like to know about, first of all, how long has this been around? I wasn't aware how long ago you came up with this.
okay, so let me just start talking about that, the history of it a little bit and how it came about. So I've told this story before, and those of you who heard it, just bear with me. But like everybody else, I was using small cleats, which came out of the orchestral instrument area for obvious reasons because they're carved. And I always felt like I never really thought about it. That's what I learned. Like that's what Dana taught me. So I just glued the little cleats in. I made the cleats, glued them in, and I love that system just because I love making the cleats. For
Mm.
me, it's an art project. It's like signing your name. Like those cleats can be gorgeous, and I really got good at it, and I just loved them. So I didn't want to abandon that system, but I wasn't happy with it because what I found was that successful crack repair has to do with controlling reflectivity. So what would happen when I glued the little cleats in is there'd be these sunken areas where the cleats were, and then you'd see this high spot where the cleats weren't. So I'd stick one cleat between each brace. You'd see a low spot where the brace was. Then there'd be a little lift if you're looking at the reflection. And you
Hmm.
see a high spot, then you see a low spot, then a high spot, and it looks like this if you look at it closely. That is fine on a 70s Martin, which is I was working on a lot of those back then, and it was fine. That's what we were repairing a lot of that stuff. And then what happened is my career went on. And this was in the early 80s when I started doing this, and then there was no such thing as a vintage guitar back then.
Right.
They were all just broken old guitars that no one knew how to fix. And so we were just kind of trying to feel our way through it and figure that out. And then what happened is at some point, Stephen Stills bought a Martin D45 for $10,000, and we were just shocked, like flabbergasted. I remember that day in the shop when we're like, $10,000? We'd heard numbers like that with violins, but not guitars. And that was my first clue that things are changing. Then the folks in Japan started paying more for guitars. I'm still doing the same thing. On my kitchen table, I'm doing a Barf refret for $75. It's taken me 6 to 8 hours.
Hmm.
So I'm doing the same thing, but what's happened is the market's changing. So it's changing the way I'm thinking about what I'm doing. So those little low spots and high spots meant nothing on the 70s Martins. There's no issue. But as the guitars climbed in value, I had to, am I talking too loud or is that
No,
okay?
no, no, not at all. It's fine. Yes.
Okay. So as the guitars started climbing in value, it was changing the way I had to think about the way I approach my work. So uh, this sounds I don't want this to come across sounding the wrong way, but I don't have any instrument out here that's less than 50 grand.
Right.
So that we can talk about it from the standpoint of like, did you fix every crack but I'm coming at this from a different place. I'm doing the same thing I was doing in the 80s. The instrument value skyrocketed. And unlike my writer friends who wanted to be writers, that turned out, now that computers do the writing, they don't value writers. But what I trained to do, which was restore vintage Martins, that became more and more valuable. I became more and more valuable just because I was doing the same old thing, but because the
Market
guitars were
share.
going up in
Right.
values,
Exactly.
I became more valuable.
Okay.
And so I felt like I had to changed with the times, and people were basically wanting me to be an investment broker. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I was just fixing broken guitars.
I don't
And
understand. I don't understand the comment about the investment broker.
Oh, because nobody wants to buy a $100,000 guitar without talking to me first.
Okay.
So they send me pictures and they say, should I buy it? And I mean, I've now got most people trained to stop doing that. But there are all kinds of variations on that because nobody wants to make that kind of commitment. $50,000. They want somebody to give them a thumbs up. At 100,000, they want 2 thumbs up. So I unexpectedly and inadvertently became that guy. So I had to draw careful boundaries around that and explain to people how I'm not an investment broker. That's not what I do. I had to come up with a formula that would protect me and make me the best, my client's best friend. And so that formula that I use on these guitars is whatever you pay me for the repair, you will get double that back in the resale. Because one of the things that I'm charged with in this business is writing appraisals. So the guitars that I let into the shop, I know what their value is. They're OMs or pre-war dreadnoughts. So I know that market. I know what that guitar would sell for, and I know when I do this work, what it will be worth after I do the work, right? That's a cool place to be in this industry, in this market, because I know how to make that. I know how to make that determination and judgment. And so if somebody's paying me, like if they're paying me $15,000 to do the repair, that's because I've determined they're going to get 30 more.
Right.
Because I also sell vintage guitars. So I know what I would sell it for once the work is done. So the model that I use, that's the model that I use. And it really works well. It protects me, and my clients just love me, of course, because why wouldn't they? It makes it a no-brainer for them. And I have everything here is an example of what I'm talking about. And it might be fun to just show you some of those projects and talk about some of those numbers. A lot of them involve top cracks. So let me just grab a guitar that will illustrate what I'm talking about. I'll be right back.
Sure.
So this guitar, for instance, I just found out the last one sold for over 200,000. So this is a 37 D28. And this is a great one to talk about in this case, because you can see the reflection on the top. You can see that right in the light. There were 2 massive cracks. These were a 1/16 of an inch gaps. It split on either side of the center seam, here and here. I don't know if you can see that right here and here. These were 1/16 inch open. They were massive. So take a case like this. If I can get these cracks to go away even 50%, we're talking about 10 grand. In this case, $20,000. This is a $20,000 repair because nobody wants to buy this with these big open cracks. But if I have a system to make these essentially go away in the marketplace, this guy can sell it for another 20 grand. So I'm kind of coming at this from a different place, and that helps explain why I did this insane thing in the first place, which was invent that kit that you have in front of you, Doug.
Okay.
And the reason you look at it and say, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with this? Is because, like most of the stuff I invent, it's not obvious or self-explanatory.
So it's also about, it's not just demonstrating what, in terms of added value you bring to a particular instrument's marketplace value, but it's also a matter of preserving the instrument's integrity as well.
Yeah. It's a combination of the two.
Okay.
But what happened with this particular tool, this one in particular, I had an OM18 in the shop. It was a 31 OM18, and it had a top crack where most of the OMs crack. They crack between the B string and the E string all the way from the bridge to the end block. And that's because it has to do with the way the bracing, the tone bars are lined up and stuff. They just almost all crack there. And this one had that crack, and it was like that for a long time, many years before I got it. And I was trying to sell it. and it was sitting on a rack over there, and nobody would look twice at it because of this crack. And the reason was because the crack had cupped up like this, right? So it was reflecting the light in an ugly fashion. The one that I just showed,
doing one of these things.
yeah, exactly. The one that I just showed you, the D28, what this system does when you put the hide glue in is as it dries overnight, it sucks it down. That long cleat, as the cleat is drying, as the crack is drying. And so you leave it overnight and the hide glue is shrinking and it's pulling the crack like this instead of like this. And it turns out if you can get the crack to go like this, it's 100 times better visually. It's going down, but this makes it look like it's an open crack. This makes it look like it's a repaired crack.
Right.
The problem is that no top wants to do that. They all want to do this. They all want to cup up.
Right.
And when you put the little cleats on, that doesn't necessarily help. You're usually pushing them up. And with any luck, that will shrink down in that spot that you put the little cleat.
Yeah.
But most of the time it does nothing. And it doesn't affect that upward cup and the reflection. So I had to come up with some way. I knew what I had to do. I just didn't want to do it because it's madness. The idea of making that thing that you have, you never want to make a tool that's not obvious and self-explanatory. Trust me. You want to make tools that somebody will pick up and say, I know what this is. Because guess who has to explain it? Or guess who's going to get the negative reviews? And that's why I did not want to release it into the public, because I could just see those 1-star reviews and my ego couldn't take it. And I would feel like I wanted to get on there and say, well, wait a second, let me explain. And the guys at StewMac, were saying, you can't talk to these people. You just deal with it. They send you a negative review. I'm like, I don't want a negative review. And I knew I was going to get all negative reviews. Who's going to be able to use this thing successfully? So I used it as an IQ test. I made the kit up and I took it to one of Dick Boak's Asia events. It was in the mid-90s, I think. And I walked in with this bag of stuff, and Dick Boak ran up and gave me a hug, and he said, what do you have? And I said, oh, it's a bag of some stuff that I invented, and I was thinking about just getting some feedback. And he said, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he started running. He just ran out of the room, and he came back with it, pulling a table. He yelled to some, it was his event. So he's like pushing tables around. And he said, this is your table. And I was like, oh, Jesus. I was trying to keep a low profile, just sneak around and show this to people and get some quiet feedback. He said, no. Oh, no, we don't want you getting any quiet feedback around here. This is your table. And so then I pulled this stuff out of the bag and I put it out and I thought, this is a perfect IQ test. I know I would never understand what this is if I saw these pieces. I would not. I can admit it. And I made it. But it was fascinating to put it out and watch who came up to the table and said, holy shit, I know what this is. There was a short list of people who understood, like walked by and stopped in their tracks and said, and lucky for me, Eric Coleman, was he here today? He was one of those guys. He's walking by, it's like, what? Came over. So I know that guy, I don't know Eric really, but I know he has a higher IQ than I have, because he understood what I had made. And Jay was with him. Jay from StewMac was with him. And it turned out to be, that's how the whole TJ making tools for StewMac thing happened. Because I said,
going back to
I said, if you guys want this tool, they said, we want this tool. And I said, okay, I just assumed they were going to sell it as a StewMac tool. And Jay said, no, we want your name on it. That's how we're going to sell it. So that's how I became a tool maker. And that's the history of how this whole thing came about.
So this was the first product that
there were a couple other things too. Okay. Like I had made the brace gluing calls with the arch in them that I sent you for regluing tone bars. Like there have been situations where I had to put in a new tone bar, add another tone bar, gluing X braces that were falling off, sometimes replacing a brace inside the guitar through the sound hole. So I had made those. There were a couple of other things there too. The belly reducer, for instance, that was also on the table. And they really wanted that tool. But all of it to me was like, did these guys have any idea the trouble we're going to get in? Because these are not obvious self-explanatory tools. what happened is Dan got involved at some point along the way, and I'm going to reference Dan here many times. Anyway, he got involved and agreed to make some videos on this stuff, and he really saved my butt, because it would be all, I'm sure they'd all be 1-star reviews by now if he hadn't gotten on there, sort of gotten behind it and said, you know, and Dan did some beautiful videos on these that you know, if there's something that's not clear, you go back and watch his video that he did on it. So he kind of saved me in that regard. So the reviews are fine. There's still a couple of like clunkers in there, but once you get the top guys in the industry saying this thing kicks ass, you know, who wants to be the guy who says, well, I don't care what those top guys said, I'm just getting started and it sucks. You know, nobody wants to be that guy. So I was lucky. I was lucky and they caught on, and now I joke that belly reducer, for instance, I expect to start seeing them in 7-Elevens, because every month, though, StewMac is ordering 18 of those kits. And and my daughter, who's taken over that division and does the manufacturing now, we look at each other just aghast every month. I expected them to sell a total of 150 of those. I made them by hand. And with my helper, Cam Willard, who used to work for me, he ran Parker Guitars for years. But anyway, he came to work for me after Parker Guitars went down, and he was a genius machinist guy, and he was making a lot of those kits by hand. I can't take total credit for it, but he figured out ways to make them with that, because I didn't have a CNC back in those days. But they've now sold over 7,000 of those units of those kits. Which is why I had to buy. Yeah, that's why I had to buy the CNC. And a lot of that is due to Dan. He interviewed me at the NAMM show, and that video kind of went viral. And I talked about what that tool does. I've never really talked about the Top Crack system in that same way. I haven't been interviewed for that in the same way, you know, in video that's gone viral or anything. But it's fun to talk to your folks today there, you know, whatever size group that is, and kind of tell them a little bit about the thought process of how it came about.
Yeah, right now we got about 70 people joining us.
Oh, that's a big group. Yeah. So hi, everybody. So that was one of the guitars, the OM18 with the cupped crack. I had to do because I couldn't sell it.
I want to take a quick step back before we open this puppy up and start looking at the components. So I just want to get an idea of what your procedure was before this whole came about, because, you know, we all know the difficulties of dealing with cracks, trying to keep them shut, trying to keep them from peaking, keeping the two plates or either side of the crack level, and all of that stuff. So when I first learned how to do cracks, it was, you know, you repaired the crack first, you had your plexiglass holes in and out of the guitar to glue it together, and then later I came in and was adding cleats after it was already repaired. And I've run across other lutes who do the cleating at the same time they do the cracks. What procedure were you following at the time before this developed?
It depended on the guitar and the crack.
Okay.
But generally speaking, I would do the cleats. I would stick the little cleats in. I used the tuner screw with the string to pull it tight, and then I deal with a little hole. But that was mostly it. I was gluing cleats in. But sometimes you have to decide: do I have to route this out and put a splint in? Right. That's a whole other topic and related, but a different discussion in some ways. But most of the time I would just try to swell the crack back together, put cleats in, and I always felt kind of dirty about it because I know it's not going to hold. I know that's going to open up. And if I did the touch up, I didn't even bother doing touch up. I just put the cleats in because I knew it was going to open up. Okay. Those cleats those little individual cleats, like on a violin, is not going to hold that crack shut on a D28.
Right.
It's going to break itself back open. So, I mean, they help and they keep it from vibrating, which is great. but there's no point in doing touch up on that crack. I wanted to come up with a system that allowed me to do touch up that I could guarantee wasn't going to come apart.
Okay, so
Okay.
so that's where you, and so how long did you spend kind of tinkering with, or did you already have it kind of engineered in your head before?
I knew that I knew there was a way to do it. I just did not want to be the guy to do it because I didn't want to be responsible for putting this out there and getting the bad reviews. I may be able to walk you over to my drawer. It's not just about the bad reviews. You really need, like when you look at that kit, you're like, okay, well, what's this do? That does one thing. That
Mhm.
kit that you have does one thing. That is good for pre-war Martins, like OMs and Dreadnoughts,
Mhm.
Advanced X Martins. That's it. That's all that kit does. I also sell a kit with no cutouts in it for everybody else, because who's working on those guitars?
You're talking
Very
about
small.
this one here.
Does that have the cutouts? No, that
This
has
one-
no cutouts, right?
That's the one with no cutouts, and then
I
I have,
brought you. Yeah, right. That's the backup calls, so people can buy those and then adapt it to the guitar that they're working on.
I get you.
But the one that's in the kit, I sell two kits, one with the notch cutouts and one without. The notch cutouts, yeah, that's for the pre-war
Yeah.
Martin Advanced X guitars.
Yeah,
But
notch
what
fits Dreadnought 1938 and earlier in modern guitars with Advanced X configuration.
Yeah, so you see why it's ridiculous to market that? Because yeah, like 2% of the 5% maybe of the people who are working on those guitars.
Mhm.
That leaves 95%. So how do I market a product that's useful to people? But StewMac wanted it, and so next thing I know, there it is in their catalog. So then Dan's making a video, and now I'm the guy behind this thing having an interview with you, and I just want to crawl under a rock
Why?
because it's private, right? That was for my own. I wanted to share that with my friends like Flip, who
Okay.
I knew would lose their crap over it, but to market that to the public is insane.
Well, are you
And
marketing it to the public, or are you marketing it to Lutz? I think there's a distinction there. Because I don't
most,
know,
but
I don't know how many people who, do you really think end users, like guitar owners, are on StewMac's website buying these things? Or is it
The,
luthiers?
well, a lot of people who are, that's another discussion. There are a lot of people with shingles out who shouldn't have them out there. A lot of people calling themselves luthiers who shouldn't be. You know that, right? I'm not telling you anything that.
But we do also have a standard policy of no Luth on Luth violence on this channel.
Yeah. Well. So the 70 people here are all luthiers, but
Of course.
there are 7,000 other people who have shingles out, who are, I don't consider luthiers, but they have shingles out anyway. Those people are buying it too. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but you understand what I'm saying? And okay. So I don't have control.
really quick.
Is that you, Ian?
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, I had my camera off.
I don't.
I mean,
see
there's
it.
there's also just to interject. There's also a lot of guitars based on those old Martins. Like I can think of using those on Santa Cruz and stuff if the bracing's relatively similar. Yeah, like a vintage artist or something. So, and those things do crack like crazy too. So
Yeah.
There may be a market outside of the purely vintage ones.
Clearly, because they're selling thousands of those too.
Yeah.
That way, I didn't get to that part of the story. I talked about the belly reducers because that was really the first one that took off. But this thing has gone viral too, which is thrilling. It's fun. It's exciting. And once a lot of people learn how to use it, it will change your life. Like Flip said, it changed my life for sure. Because I didn't finish the story. So the OM18 sold the following week after I invented this thing and fixed the crack with it. The next week, somebody came in, didn't even ask about the crack, was a non-issue. So we went from this to this and they bought it the next week. And I thought, wait a second. I knew it looked great, but I didn't realize the impact it was going to have in the marketplace. I also didn't feel dirty about it. I didn't feel like, well, that's not going to hold. I knew it was going to hold. I knew I could touch it up if I wanted to. I didn't touch it up because it was a vintage guitar and I just wanted to leave it unmolested, but it looked amazing. At the same time, I wanted to finish this piece of the story about the history of how this came about. At the same time, I had that OM18 sitting on the guitar stand. I had an OM45 I was building, and it was hanging in the back of my shop, and the power went out that night, and the humidifier didn't come on.
Oh boy.
I came in the morning, and there was a center seam crack open on the OM45. I understand viscerally why Ian hates guitars. This is you want to talk about a bad day. Build an OM45, have your humidifier go out, and then come in and see it open center seam. I mean, none of my clients are going to be happy with an open center seam. Say, you'll get used to it. No, that's not an option. On a 45, of course, up until that time, I had the little glue the cleats on. Now I have to saw the top off. And I've done it before. Before I invented this, I would saw the top off if it developed a crack or an open center seam. I'd just get out the jigsaw and take it off and start over again and try to not hate guitars. But this center seam opened up, and I knew I had to do it. I had to make this system. And so that was the other thing that inspired it. And the reason that I say it's insane is because most guitars don't fit that bracing configuration. So if I'm going to put a kit out there with the notches, what's it good for? And you know that most people are going to buy it saying, great, I'll fix my top crack. They go to use it, it doesn't fit, right? It's not going to fit most guitars.
Right.
And that's not going to be self-explanatory or obvious. But it changed my life to the point that I definitely wanted to share this with my top luthier friends because I knew they would appreciate it once they tried it. And that's the history of why I ended up doing it and how I ended up inadvertently releasing it to the public. Public meaning that 7,000 luthiers out there who have bought the belly reducer.
So how long ago was that in terms of chronologically that this thing kind of came about into?
That particular kit was about 10 years ago.
For the top crack.
The belly reducer was like 15 years ago.
Okay. All right.
But the top crack kit came along a little bit later. Yeah, that sort of the.
I think it was longer than that.
Oh yeah,
I think
like
so.
more than
I think
10.
more than 10.
Okay. Well, in my brain, I was
selective about the passage of time.
Well, no, I was super reluctant to release it. There was no bone in my body that wanted to be the guy behind this, that wanted to take responsibility for explaining how it worked, or the bad reviews. There's another aspect of it which I haven't gotten into, and that's the making of those cleats. And if you take a look at one of those, that thing is almost impossible to make. Yeah, I talked about that at Brian Gallup's school last summer at a seminar that he had. Yeah, they are like to create that thing, and it's a triple bias, as Mark Stutman called it, on the way it's cut, the way the wood is oriented. If you don't get the orientation correct, it'll just cup, right? It'll become a hygrometer.
Right.
Which is cool if you want to know what the humidity is, but I don't want them acting as hygrometers. I want them remaining stable. And so I have to select the wood carefully. It has to be super dry, and then manufacturing it is a bit of a nightmare. The attrition rate is off the charts. So that's another thing. I didn't want the first ones I was making by hand. Back when Dan made his video, you'll see in his video, he says, and TJ's manufacturing this with a CNC. And I was like, no, I'm not CNC. Those are made by hand. But after he said it, I was like, you know what? I should be making these with the CNC. So I got the CNC for making the belly reducers. And then I was like, can I figure out how to have this machine make these cleats? And eventually came up with something, but it's a real, it's a project, man, keeping those things coming. So now they order thousands and thousands of those. And guess who has to make them? That's right. So
you
I'm
go.
making cleats. I don't want to supply those cleats. I got stuff to do.
Well, I
With
can't
these
imagine
orders-
how you would make these.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
No, you know, because
Yeah.
they're so perfectly uniform, and they're.
Yeah.
I mean, the
And
grain orientation on all of them is perfectly at 45 degrees.
and
or about 30.
they're pretty much weightless too, wouldn't you
Yeah,
say?
I was amazed at how light these are, because
Yeah.
when I first saw the thing, even before you gave it to me, I was like, how can you justify putting that much wood inside a guitar?
Right. And then you see it, and it's like, yeah,
You know, I'm holding the dozen of them that you sent me, and that they weigh nothing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
So that gets back to why I didn't have a bone in my body that wanted to release it. Because if you see pictures of it, you'll think what you thought. I thought this guy knew what he was doing with vintage guitars. Why would he glue this in there? Right. And so, because I have a reputation to guard, and that's why I had to create something that was weightless, super strong, and could come out in 5 minutes. Right. I couldn't do anything to these vintage guitars that wasn't completely reversible. So when you hide glue those things in, you can literally take them out with a damp sponge that's a little bit warm. They'll come right back out.
Mm.
So if somebody wants to sell their guitar without that cleat in it, I can take it out in 5 minutes. And that was important to me because I didn't want to be the guy who did anything on these guitars that was not reversible. But this guitar that I just showed you I did this. I've been working on this for 6 months. I did this 6 months ago, and you can see these cracks. These are going nowhere, and I'm confident that they won't go anywhere. And as I said, they were open 1/16 of an inch. So I swelled this body back together for 3 months before the day I put use this cleat system and put them in, because there's a risk with doing that the top will crack somewhere else, but those cracks aren't going to open up. And that was my goal, to put this back so that I could sleep at night and know that they were going to stay in place. And it's worked. That was months ago now, and those are still. I'm working on other problems on this guitar, but not that one. The cracks are fixed, and it's with this system that we're talking about, and that's why I had to do it, because in this case, he's going to be able to sell this for $20,000 more. Now, in this case, I fixed these cracks for probably $1,000. I charged him for these. This guitar he's paying me $28,000 to repair it, but the crack part of it was probably $1,000 just to fix the top crack. But that piece of this is what I'm trying to stress, that at least in this shop, in this working on these vintage guitars, it's 20 grand. I mean, it's in value. It's so valuable. This kit,
Right.
You cannot do it without it. You can't glue little tabs in there and pull this off. It will rip itself back apart. So that's an example. I just happen to have this one here. That's a pretty good example of what happens with the numbers and why I had no choice. I had to do it. Partly because of how I felt, but
did you splint those two cracks?
No. I was trying to avoid that.
You said you swelled them together over a course of
3 months.
So
Yeah,
and
I just kept changing.
How are you doing that? Are you just like putting it in a case with a humidifier, or you got?
I didn't even bother. I just put a little dish with a sponge in it that I kept wet. I put it right between the two cracks, and I just blocked the sound hole for 3 months. And I just kept wetting the sponge.
Dish inside the guitar and just blocked up the sound
Yeah,
hole.
I didn't bother to put it in a bag. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Partly because I wanted to focus on those cracks. I didn't want to affect the rest of the body more than I had to.
Right.
I didn't want to swell the whole body. I wanted to swell those cracks back together. And when I was confident, they're tight. I was able to pull them back together, and they've held. So I'm glad I had this guitar around for this demo.
Yeah, that's cool.
But the place that you would use this most probably is open center seams. Like I had somebody brought me a Collings guitar. Actually, Collings sent it to me, and the center seam opened up, and I used it for that. And I didn't finish the story about the OM45, that new guitar I had made. It looked like a factory original.
Hmm.
The crack was completely gone. The cleat looks like I installed it when I made the top. So I was able to sell the guitar as a new guitar and spray the finish on it. Never opened up. There was not even a fissure in the new finish.
Hmm.
So to me, like that guitar, to saw that top off would have been so much money and lost and work for me. And I was able to reverse that problem. And that's the other cool thing about this. When you get used to the system, is it looks like it was done in the factory, right? It's not a kind of random, like, oh, that's pretty close to the crack. That's almost on. That one was nearly lined up.
Yeah.
You know, when you put this in, it looks like it was done when the guitar was made. You know, they butt up against the tone bars if you want, and it just looked like I made it as part of the guitar. So those were two examples that I said I got to take this to Dick Folks Asia thing, and that's why I took it with me. But it was supposed to be private. I never wanted to make thousands and thousands of these cleats. But they're a project, man. You know, I know a lot about how to make them now, but I got a lot of other things I need to do.
Well, I think you're, it sounds like you have, Destiny is going to have you making little wooden strips for a very long time.
I'd like to turn this over to somebody and train somebody else, but we'll see how this unfolds. But for now, like all of this stuff, I still learn all the time. And I feel like that if there's more for me to learn, I got to keep doing it until I get it down. Because I keep making improvements. I keep coming up with ways to do this stuff better. And one of the fun things about getting a tool out in the field is getting feedback from other people. They come up with their own ways to use it, and it's fascinating. Like for instance, Mark Stepman showed me that he uses the belly reducer thing. You know what that is with the concave and convex. He heats them up, and then after you take a bridge off, you know how the wings like to cup the wrong way. He'll use those cawls, heat them up, and then clamp the bridge down. It has that soft curve in it.
Okay, yeah.
And so he'll clamp them, and then when he pops it off, they're flat. So he uses it in that way. It's cool. It's not what I made it for, but it's fun to get feedback like that where other people come up with new ways to use it. Okay, so should I just go on about the this kit now and how it works?
Yeah, let's look. Do you have one there that we can open up and show everybody the different components that are in here, or do you want me to open up mine?
Oh, I want you to open yours.
Okay.
I have a bunch of them here that my daughter just made, but she sealed them, I think. She's not going to be happy if I cut them.
So we've got, let me see, I should have set up a separate camera for this, but let me see, just do it in front of the laptop. So I've got this main part here, which is the kit for the vintage guitars, and then you gave me this thing this is for making calls for different bracing.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So what do I have in here? I've got instructions that I don't need now because you're
here. Right.
I've got a mess of cleats. So what I've got I've got 3 sections here. I've got I've got
you have notched calls, and you have some that are unnotched in there. And I provide a couple for people so they can at least fix the crack that they bought the kit to work on. So there are 2 unnotched and 3 that are already notched for the vintage Martins.
Okay, so let me just take the notched ones out first.
Yeah. So you'll see the madness there. See how they're stepped?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so you can flip them around either way, and that step allows you to get, because you got to get over the tone bars, right? That's the problem. And all the way across the top, and the tone bars are at an angle. If they were straight, this would be a no-brainer. But because they're angled, those notches,
they're angled that way.
Yeah.
So if I held them next to each other.
So they'll go they will mate with the center line of the top.
Okay.
You pick the one that happens to go where that crack is. Like I can't decide where the guitar is going to crack. I just had to provide tooling for fixing a crack anywhere on the top.
All right. So if you're so this is to go with the tone bars, and you can use it this way or you can use it that way depending
Yep.
on how far up the
Yep.
crack is. And the different pieces are for creating different lengths of crack. So if my crack was mostly behind the tone bars down towards the tail block, I'm using that one there.
No,
Oh.
that's not why. Pretend the crack goes the whole way from the bridge to the end of the bar.
Okay.
Because you're gonna load that cleat on every one of those curved surfaces,
Oh, okay.
leaving a cutout for the braces.
This way.
Yep. And then you cut out for the braces. So the cleat is going to sit down in that that curved recessed area. The cleat well, I don't want to say dovetails.
Wow.
It locks into that curved surface. The curve matches on the cleat matches the curve on the cutout on the I call it a jumper call. Those
Okay.
parts. Those are the jumper calls, and then the other piece is the part that goes on top. That's the top call. It looks like this.
Let me see where my top
Right,
call.
this is 6 inches by 1 inch. Can you hold yours up, Doug?
Yeah.
Yours looks better than mine. Mine's all drilled and yeah. So it says this side up because I decided to use the strongest magnets I could, which stick out of the guitar, and that's
get
why I
it.
mentioned selling these things to the public, because some percentage of those 7,000 people with shingles out there are going to put that down the wrong way on the top, and then I'm going to have a lawsuit. They're going to jam those magnets into the spruce.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's why it says this side up. I'm trying to protect myself from a legal claim.
So you're dealing with that sandwich between your top.
Well, you're cutting out all those pieces of wood in between the braces.
Yeah. Put
Yeah.
a notch one on there, Doug. Load a notch one on there. It will make more sense, I think. Oh, that was a notch one. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you do the cutout, and you can see part of the reason that the cleat has the grain angled like that, it matches the cutouts on the call.
Okay. So you're just gonna notch your brace, your cleat where those braces are here and here. You just give them, and then they'll rest in. You got a couple of short lengths. So, but my curiosity is this. So why explain the efficacy of the 3 different areas of notches for.
Oh, because the tone bars are angled. They're angled across the top.
Oh, so if your crack is over here, you would use
You pick the one that happens to be where the crack is.
Exactly. Okay, I'm following.
So what you do, you put the top call with the center line scribed down the middle. You put that on the top on the crack.
Right.
Hold it on there, and then you start choosing the. What most people are going to do, Doug, is they're going to make a map of the top themselves on that guitar, and then make their own cutouts. So they'll know exactly where the crack is, and they'll know exactly which way the call is going to orient, because they will have made it. I provided a kit that happens to work for all, as Ian pointed out, a lot of Collings, a lot of Santa Cruz, everybody that copied Martin and that pre-war bracing orientation. It will work for those guitars. But most guitars, you'd have to make your own because the bracing pattern is different.
Let me see if I have something.
Humac used to sell large sheets of clear plastic that they don't sell anymore, that you could lay on the top and draw out and it had a hole in it too. I already had the sound hole.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them here, Dan, that I bought because you told me about that, and you told me they may not be around forever, so I bought a bunch of them. But yeah, this is awesome for mapping the braces. You can see I've done that here on the guitar, and you can use dry erase marker if it's temporary, and just you put it on there, and then I mean, you guys all know about this, I'm sure, but you can use, these. I mean, StewMac sells those cool magnet things. You can use these magnets, like one on the inside and one on the outside of the top, and then just scoot around the top and mark where the braces are. I had that all set up so I could show you, but you folks probably already know all that. But
Your
yeah, once you
magnets are better. I like those magnets that you use. The ones
these
I've got
guys,
from
yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, they're super strong. These are the ones that go in the top crack kit. These are the ones that are in the this part of the jumper call.
I have bought a good deal of those magnets from you. And I drill lots of holes. I have used so many of those calls for so many different shapes.
Oh yeah,
And I
Yeah.
like the unnotched ones because you can figure out what you want and put it in the milling machine is the best way. And make your own to cover anything.
well, I'm gonna take you on, if you've all taken your Dramamine, I'm gonna take you on a little field trip here. Sure. Reverse this camera for a second. So I want to walk you over to this drawer and show you this. This is what's happening in the sausage factory that's not obvious when you buy that kit.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's what Dan has too. Eventually what happens is you end up with all this stuff for all these different guitars, and then I mark it. I'm like, this is a 32-018 center seam, 1932-018 bass side crack. There's something, here's an 016 New Yorker center seam. So you don't throw it out. You just custom make it for that one thing. And then I've got, I have 100 of these for all of these different cracks that I've had to deal with over the years. But this is the other thing that the other reason I didn't want to release this is because really you need all this stuff, not just one kit. You need a bunch of these things. And that's why I started selling those packs of 3 of the jumper calls. So people could make their own drawer like that if they wanted to. But it's a little bit of a tease, right? To not provide this stuff, make it readily available. Once somebody gets hooked on it, I'm kind of suggesting there's no going back for me. I have to use this thing, and so I wanted to be able to make it available to people. And the camera's all messed up, but anyway, so yeah, Dan was talking. He got onto this. And this is really cool, but since it's not available, you can go to Home Depot and get this. I bought this roll. This is painter's paper, right? It's just super thin, and you can tape it to the top, cut it to the shape, and then map out the top on this. I have a bunch of these maps, right? And then I just have a drawer full of these things. They're all rolled up someplace. Mm-hmm. But each time I map out a top, I save it. So the next time I know, I can refer to that if that guitar comes along again. And then I know, right, it's telling you where to make the notches. Once you know where the braces are, that tells you, where the crack is. Once you know where the braces are, you know where to make your cutouts.
I get you.
In the jumper calls.
Okay, so you have a blank call in here with magnets taped to it. That's just make a custom call. The magnets.
There are 2. Yeah, there are 2. There's one with magnets and one without. Right. You can see on this one, I've drilled extra magnets because there are situations where you want to use a shorter piece or you want to jump over something, or you don't have to use the calls in that configuration. Here's one that I made for just a short section. It's super strong with those things. Yeah, but I only needed this small section for this. And sometimes on some guitars, there's. Sorry, go ahead.
I've got tons of those, all cut up just like that. And do you sell the magnets too, or let people know that those are available?
I do sell the magnets, yeah.
Because people will be doing a lot of drilling and magnet installing on those calls.
Yeah.
So I'm starting. this is starting to sink in for me because one of the things I actually love about it now is seeing how versatile it can be. you know, for the kit to just say, you know, it's good for Dreadnought 38s and earlier, et cetera, which is fine. You know, we see a number of those on a given year, but only a certain number of those in a given year. You know, having the versatility to be able to make as many of those calls as you need for any crack that shows up is, to me,
Yeah.
that's what genius is. Because,
Yep.
you know, being able to have that kind of versatility in a single tool and then have it being expandable, that all I need to do is make one once for one guitar with a crack in a given location, then it's in the drawer forever for
Yeah.
when something for that size fits shows up again.
Yeah. So I'm just going to mention a couple other things that you're going to want in your brain when you go to use this kit. The one thing that's missing from Dan's video on this tool that I would have added if I'd been there, I would have said, wait. He has the double stick tape in the video, but you want to, I just use this regular like Scotch double stick tape. And when you do this, you want to take a piece about this long. I don't know if you can, my camera, I put the phone in backwards.
Okay.
Anyway, so like an inch long or maybe a little bit more. And what you can do is fold the ends a little bit like that. So you make a little tab on the end of the
Okay.
tape. And then when you put it over the call, over the jumper call, oh yeah, camera's over here, press the center. You want it just in the middle like that. Press it. Can you see that? So press
Yeah.
the tape in the middle and then wrap this down. You want to
Okay.
make sure you want to stick it to the call really well. And that little tab will help you grab it after. But if you don't, it's really hard to get the double stick tape off the call.
Well, right. Yeah.
You want to be able to reach in there, and what you do is you pop it this way. As you're popping it off the call, off the wooden call that you've glued in,
Okay.
and you want it to release. I take some of the stick out of this, right? So you're going to put 3 pieces of double stick tape on those jumper calls, one in the middle of each section, and then take some of the stick out, just a little bit. Use your finger or something to take a little bit of the stick out, and then stick the wooden call on tight. Then make your cutouts. I use a little saw that Dan gave me like this.
Mm-hmm.
You can also do it with a blade. You can trim them, but I usually saw them.
Yeah.
If your cleat is a little bit short for some reason, like you're trying to maximize the use, you can do one section at a time. I don't have the right jumper call here, but you do this section, cut it, then move it over. Do this section, cut it, move it over, and you're going to end up with like an extra inch or two.
Okay.
So you can actually maximize the length of that call by sliding it over and sticking it on the tape in each section at a time. Man, I hope, see what I mean about explaining this? It's you've got it in front of you and it's hard to explain.
Yeah. My next question before you brought up the tape was because, of course, like I said, since you're here, I didn't even look at the directions. But my next question was, how did you manage to hold the cleats in place while you're inserting this in the guitar?
Yeah. So the double
That's
stick
in the
tape is the trick.
instructions, in the print. You do have that there. It's all trying and doing it and understanding how it actually works, and it wasn't as hard as you thought.
Yeah, exactly. And in Dan's video, he has the double stick tape. He just didn't wrap it over. But I would recommend that you wrap it over.
But I do.
So that when you pull it out, you do that now. But when you pull it out, it will stick to the call and not the cleat.
You don't want that.
That's the key. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure you had that in your brain, Doug. And if you want, I can just set my camera up so I have a guitar here. I thought I might just walk through.
That would be awesome.
Okay, I'll just try to move the camera quickly and set it up so that if I can, hopefully you guys will be able to see this.
Oh, we got some live Luthen.
Going down there.
Pretty good. Just run up to Blade.
Never heard from Blake.
I saw on the way out.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah, when I got here.
Oh,
Oh, boy.
So this OM28 from 1932 is in kind of rough shape.
It's seen better days.
But this is going to be,
It's got a bunch of tools and a picture on the back of the guitar that I can see through the sound hole.
yeah, well, that's because it's missing its back. But you can see it has some cracks, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So this crack, this is the one. Well, this is the one I was talking about before that always happens between the B and the E and goes all the way from, usually goes from here all the way down. This one
So-
happened to crack on the other side as well.
Mhm.
These cracks happen when you can see there's almost nothing to this bridge plate, right? It's like 87 thousandths.
Yeah.
And when the bridge starts to come off, it cantilevers the top forward, and then the bridge pins
Mhm.
split the top. Right, it's the bridge pin pushing against the spruce as it's pulling
Right.
forward.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
want to catch that as fast as possible for obvious reasons. Um, but let's see how much of this you'll be able to see if I set this down. Can you still see that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is let's pretend this is the crack that we're going to be working on. So this is how you would go about it, Doug. This crack is obvious, so we don't have to use a magnifying glass to find it. But the first thing you would do is reach through the sound hole and select the jumper call that you think is going to be right. Well, actually, what you probably should do is map it out. Right, draw a map of the braces. Then you'll
Right.
know which one. You'll know which one most likely is in the ballpark. Because
Right,
once
right.
you see that brace, you'll be able to just set it on the drawing
Mhm.
and say, "Oh, that's where those braces are. This is the one." So that's how I mean, by now I have them all marked, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I have, they're just designated already, so I don't have to do that. But the first thing you'd want to make that map. That will help you decide which one or how to make the one that you're going to use. And then obviously you'd have to reach through the sound hole to do this. But because there's no back, I can show you what happens. So this call is marked center seam, but you can see the reason that they're angled, the notches. You can see what happens.
You
See
can
how it does? It will do like this whole span.
add a little
Um,
index against the braces and ride like
It will
rails.
do a span of about 1.5 inches.
Yeah.
And then you just like if you're down here, you could flip this and do this area.
Oh
Can you
boy.
see that?
Yeah, I can.
Right. So you flip it the other way, and then you can do this a crack down here. But between those three, you can get everything. This one is really made for the center seam, so it works best on the center seam. But I can for this demonstration, I can actually get away with doing it down here. So I know it's going to go here. See, it doesn't come all the way up here. We
Mhm.
would probably this is about where we'd want it for the center seam. So it's coming almost to the bridge plate. It depends on the crack. Like this crack point stops here, so it's not too bad. But I wouldn't use this call for this crack. It's just the one that I happen to grab. And eventually I will make one for this particular crack. So I've now located where that jumper call is going to go, and then this guy is going to go on the top.
So this guitar going to be resurrected in the shop, or is this just a crash dummy?
Oh no, it's going to be resurrected. Yeah, no, all this is going to go away.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean this is a super valuable guitar. This is one of only 6 Sunburst OM28 that they made. I mean, we only know of 3 others that have been documented, but this is one of the. According to the records, they made 6. We don't know where the other 2 are, but this is one of those. And so my job is to make all this go away. I think somebody El Kabonged it over a chair. You can see on this side it's a little rough.
Hmm.
Got some work to do.
Are you treating any of these old dirty cracks with something like acetic acid to, clean them out and make them less dark?
You mean if this happens to be dirty from years of
Yeah.
of people running their finger over it and stuff? Absolutely. Yeah, you want to have it. I would rather have it too clean than any dirty.
So what are you using for cleaning that out? Are you using oxalic acid, or are you just?
I use anything. Comet cleanser, oxalic acid, I start with the light stuff. I'll start with the lighter, safer chemicals like naphtha or something. See what that does, because you don't know what the dirt is. But I just keep going and going until it's out of there, even if I have to cut it out.
Mhm.
Because clean is way better. You don't want it looking black when you glue it up.
Right.
So yeah, so I use anything, absolutely anything, including a blade. But stiff brushes for sure. But I use Comet Cleanser. It's kind of what it's made for.
Say Comet?
Yeah, scrubbing
Oh.
out dirt with a
Okay.
stiff brush. And it has some bleach in it, so it's helping in that respect too.
Okay.
But yeah, I have no limitations in that regard. I'll use anything if I think it might work. And everyone's different, so you got to, if it's oil, that's going to be different. You might have to use, you might find yourself using Dawn or Palmolive dishwashing liquid and scrubbing it again with a stiff brush with dishwashing liquid. If you think it's oil, it just depends on what's in there. So anyway, I hope that answers that question. So once you get these two parts figured out, and okay, this is going, you line up this has you can see on yours, Doug, it has a scribed line down the middle.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Okay, so that you line up on the crack.
Yep.
And you get it all lined up. So you've got the jumper call in there. You've got the top call, and then that's where the top call is going to go. You know that now, right? That's there's only one place that you want it to go. So you've got it figured out, and now it's time to mark it. So I take a piece of tape like this. It's going to be a little tricky to see, but you could mark like SH on one side, the sound hole. It should work either way. It should work the same either way. But if you want, you can just put a little marker on it so you know which side's going towards the sound hole, just in case there's any difference. And then I just put a piece of tape on there that flags your brain, so you know. Oh yeah, so that's going there. So okay, that's the bottom, and this is the side. You don't need to mark every side.
Right. It gives you your index.
Yeah, you don't need to mark every side.
Okay.
Just whatever works for you, whatever you remember. I put as little tape as possible on the top on these old guitars, just because I don't want to risk pulling it off. This is super low tack stuff, so it's not an issue.
Right.
So once you know where that's going to go, you can put it back in place quickly, and that's going to be key, because you're going to use hide glue to put this all together. That's what's going to give you that shrinking as it dries and pulling it down. You could use other glues, people do, but I prefer hide glue because I like that shrinking effect. And it's also easily reversible. But the secret to success with this kit is it's going to do everything at the same time. Like before, I would be gluing up. You have to choose. Do I glue the crack first and then put the cleats in, or do I put the cleats in and then glue the crack?
Right. Exactly.
This is doing everything at once. You're going to glue the cleat in and glue the crack all at the same time.
Okay.
And that's the secret sauce. That's what makes it work. You don't want to be having to choose which one am I going to do.
Right.
You want to do them both. And I knew that in my mind back when I was like, yeah, should I take a chance at making this monster? And now I'm super glad I did, just because of the results. But that's what makes it work. You're gluing the crack and the cleat all at the same time. And the reason you're using hide glue is because there's so much water in it that it's making the crack swell.
Right, because
liquid.
It's also drying. The hide glue is also drying by the evaporation of the water.
Yeah, but you're adding water to the crack, which is swelling it.
Yeah.
You're gluing it with water, basically. So you're using the vehicle you want to swell the crack together. Like this crack is going to be, this will be like that D28, right? I'm going to have to swell this back together. I don't know if you can see that, but I don't want that. I want to bring that back together so I don't have to touch up this sunburst. So I got this marked. I've got it located. Now it's time. You can take the call out, the jumper call inside, put your wooden, you're going to put your double stick tape on there, as I described. Then you fit the wooden pieces in the call,
Hmm.
and now you're ready for action. You got your hide glue pot. You got the hide glue. This is my virtual hide glue today.
Okay.
You got that all hot. Then you grab your handy dandy one of these,
Yeah.
or hair dryer is probably safer than this, but I've gotten used to this over the years. And you start heating everything. And I do that. I'll heat all this stuff. I've got this thing right by the crack, and I'm heating the bottom of this call. My top call, I'm heating that too.
Okay.
Right. So now I'm heating this call, the crack, and the cleat all at the same time,
All right.
getting them all warmed up. You can start by heating on the inside a little bit if you want. It depends on the temperature of your shop, but my shop is usually warm enough that it's not a big deal. But if you're working out in the garage, you're going to need to use an ancillary heater to get you through this, because you want to try to warm the room up if you can. That'll help you. So warm up the inside of the guitar, then warm all this stuff up out here.
I like
And then
it. I like the heat gun that the heat gun approach for applying heat. How do you feel about folks that are using like a heat lamp sitting above the guitar? Would that work too?
oh, perfect. Yeah, I love it. I switched to LED bulbs, so I can't do that anymore.
Right.
They were the incandescent bulbs were destroying my lamps, just one after another. I kept changing the fixtures. The 100-watt bulbs just destroyed them.
Yep.
So you're looking at the LED bulb, which I can hold because it's totally cool.
Yeah, I have a secret compartment right here that I keep my 100 light bulb in because you can't find them anymore.
Yes, yeah, I have some if you need them. I bought a bunch of them. I bought a truckload of them. But yeah, I love that. I love that. I just don't have them in my lights anymore. But absolutely, that's the perfect thing. You can just drop it down to about here with a 100-watt bulb and come back 5 minutes later, and it's going to be perfect.
Okay.
It will heat right through the top. That's even better. In fact, I'm glad you said that, Doug, because I used to do that all the time. And then I switched to the other bulbs and I just stopped. But I think that's even better because it's a soft heat that will heat up the whole area.
Mhm.
And then this is when things get a little bit hairy. Like as you get more experience with it, this will be less nervous making. But what you have to do now, you know where this is going to go. So the next thing you do is tape this in place. So you grab your low tack tape and just tape this thing right on that spot in both ends.
Mm-hmm.
Because you just don't want to have to. Well, sorry, not yet. Sorry. You get your hide glue next.
Okay.
And I actually have mine in a squirt bottle. I grabbed this, but I have a little squirt bottle. Squirt it into the crack and then work it down in there like this.
Okay.
After you've napped it off the crack first, obviously you've napped it off the top, so you're not rubbing dirt in it. But I squirt bottle after it's warm the hide glue into it and work it all the way down into the crack. Then I grab a damp cloth and wipe off the excess.
Okay. How much open time are you giving yourself to really get glue into that crack?
Oh, this is seconds. You're going squirt like this, wipe.
Okay.
And I'm wiping it with warm water coming out of my glue pot.
Well, yeah, it just dawns on me because, and this is another thing that's really appealing to me, because the second part that goes inside the guitar, since your cleat, and I might be jumping ahead of the gun here, but since your cleat is covering the full length of the crack and you're going to have glue on the entire length of the cleat, we don't have to play that stupid game anymore of constantly inside the guitar, seeing the bead of glue coming out. Because that to me was always a telltale sign of whether I had enough glue, is I could see the line of glue from the inside of the guitar, but I was constantly having to look inside the guitar. By having the glue on the cleat section that covers the full length of the crack, I no longer have to concern myself with that.
Nope. But you do want the glue to come through. That's ideal.
Of course, yeah.
If it doesn't matter because you're going to have enough on the cleat that it's going to squirt it back up from the bottom.
Right.
It's going to squish it back up from the bottom. But I left out the glue. You obviously want glue. Once you get to this step, it's heated up. You put your glue in after you've cleaned the top, work it down in with your finger, grab your paper towel, wipe off the excess, and then pop this into place.
Okay.
So you can do all this stuff in 90 seconds.
Right.
I've done it many times. Glue it. You've got your tape handy, so you just grab the pieces, stick it on, then put your glue on your cleat and brush it or however you want to do it so that it's even. And now you're going to reach inside like this, and you want to practice this a couple times before,
Right.
because you kind of want to know your orientation. It will orient itself with the magnets. It'll pop right into place. But obviously you don't want to be dragging the glue cleat over the braces and stuff.
Right.
But you'll start to feel the magnet pull. When you get in there, it'll start to pull it into place.
Mm-hmm.
And with this thing taped down solid, it will lock in right where you want it to be. So now you're not done, but you're 3/4 of the way there. Now the next thing is you want to have the right clamp, and these are my favorite. But
Yeah,
you need a clamp. You need a clamp that's going to go inside this body all the way down to that guy, and you're going to put it right on the. If you line it up with the center scribe mark, it will be right on the caul underneath, and just start to tighten them together. I sometimes put 2 of these on. Like I'll drop this down here and put another one here. If the crack is really cupped, go ahead and clamp the living crap out of it. Like if it's really cupped up and you're trying to reverse that, you can put 2 of these clamps on. I'll start one down here and then have one up here.
Mm-hmm.
Most like this crack wouldn't require that because this one is kind of unusual. It's not doing that. This is nice and level. Well, it's cupped up a little bit right here, but not too bad. This is all flat. So that's kind of unusual, but most cracks are not doing that. So then you got your clamps in place and you leave it overnight, which is plenty. And then when you take them off, you're gonna light up. That's what Flip was talking about. You're just not gonna believe it.
Well, the other thing that appeals to me about this is that, and the thing that got me right away when I saw pictures of other people using it, is that I saw pictures on the website, is that this top caul is especially when you're dealing with high glue and some other glues as well, but when you use a full length plexi caul for any crack, any of the squeeze out creates its own seal along the full length of the crack, as opposed to trying to, I've seen people do with magnets along the length of a crack individually. That levels the 2 sides of the crack, but all of that squeeze out coming up on plexi creates this, like almost sealing the crack for you without having, and very often you don't even have to go back to finish.
You don't have to touch it up. Yeah, most of the time, like the hide glue, the liquid in the hide glue, the water will swell the crack together, and it does its own sealing. Yeah, it's like you added the touch up already. But the magnets are really for alignment. They're not clamping. They're just holding it in place while you put the clamp on. The clamp is it doesn't come with the kit, but you got to have clamps that will lock that thing down, and the tighter the better. Like you don't want to damage the top, obviously. It would be really hard to do that with one of these. You couldn't clamp it enough to damage it with that top caul that's an inch wide.
And those are the old Waverly clamps.
Yeah.
North, what is it, Northfield?
Yeah. They sell those. Yeah.
They resurrected those. Yeah, those are fantastic. I've got an arm.
So my buddy Mark Stutman he couldn't be here today for whatever reason. I'll strangle him later. But he wanted me to be sure and tell you folks that not to try to use this on tops that have too much radius, because he's the Gibson guy, right? So he's had to adapt all this system for the Gibsons, because they got you're using flat calls, right?
Right.
But enter Dan Earlywine again. I know I don't want to wear his name out here, but he found a way around this by notching. You can cut notches in the back of this to make it flexible,
Okay.
which is really cool. I don't know how he dealt with the part on top. Maybe he used a thinner piece of plastic on top. But you could actually notch this too, so that you could flex it.
Yeah.
You know, you could make your own. You know, all this stuff is it's just stuff that I made myself and tried to make it more presentable for public consumption. But you can make any of these parts yourself with plexiglass.
Sure. Yeah. You could cut a radius in the top.
You could.
First.
You could. It would be tricky. You'd have to have a CNC to mill the fingernail curve in the call. You couldn't do that on a milling machine.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. But by kerfing it, you would be able to, the bottom call, you would be able to get it to easily bend to a curve because it's flexible as it is.
Yeah. Hey, I just saw a little pop-up on the screen. Mark, is that you? Are you there? Did he sign in? I thought I saw a little thing. Can you unmute your mic and say hello? Uh-oh. Are you there, Mark?
Mark Stutman, can you please come to the foyer?
Oh, he's trying. He says he's trying. His thing says he's trying. Now I thought he was the
Mr. Mark Stutman.
Because he would be the better guy to talk about like how to deal with this on radius tops.
Maybe I'll send him a request. Hold on, let me see if I can find him.
Oh, he's there, Ian. He's there. He's sending messages saying he's trying to unmute his mic. He's on here, but
okay. Should we sing? You want to sing until he unmutes?
we'll wait till he gets on, and then we'll have him sing.
I think I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is. Hey,
hold
Mark.
on a second. Let me get you on screen, Mark. Hold on.
All right. I'm somewhere in there. I've been lurking quietly in the background this whole time, TJ.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I'm trying to multitask. It's not working very well.
You have your there we go. Hold on a second.
I can't see myself though. How do I see
Let's
myself?
get everybody.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, there I am.
You got the headphones on.
How are you,
Yeah,
Mark?
well, I work in a shop with other people, right? I can't be having them be all distracted too.
Right.
Anyways,
perfect timing though. I was just telling him about you and how you asked me to mention not a good idea to try to use it on radius tops. So could you talk a little bit about some
Sure.
of your ways of
can I
getting
talk
around
about
that
a different? I use this stuff, TJ. That
Oh,
stuff
yeah.
that I want 18 miles of.
Yeah. I'm going to be putting that on the website soon after your request. Mark just requested $1,000 worth of this.
Yeah, so basically for every one of these that we work on that has a radius top,
Right.
if you use TJ's Martin system, you can damage these guitars something fierce.
Right.
Which is generally not what people are paying us to do. And so TJ came up. I love that system. I think it works brilliantly. I don't use old school cleats at all anymore. If a crack does not close at regular humidity, at shop humidity, 40%, 42, whatever it is for you, then the only cleat that I will use is TJ's system because it doesn't open again, as you said. Like it's true. And I've seen too many, being up here in Canada, we see so many cracks that were repaired and cleated that were probably nice and closed once upon a time that come back and they're open. And there's these cleats in there now that are just in the way of you trying to fix it again, that we don't bother. So if there's a crack that's not closed tight at shop humidity and it's not so huge that you have to splice it, then we'll use the TJ system. And I love it. But for Gibsons, you can't use that stuff because it'll hurt the top. So TJ makes this stuff. There's green tape and a magnet on it, but it's the same U-shaped channel on a piece of plexi.
Okay.
And because it's got these magnets on it, they're flexible. And TJ markets these as side and back crack correctors. And you put magnets on it, and then you stick the same cleat mechanism in it, and then you clamp through the guitar with magnets. And it's not as much clamping pressure, obviously, as what you get with TJ system on the flat top with your big clamps. But I'm finding that you don't need to use that much clamping
So
force.
with the
Um,
flexible, you're using that on a top crack, say for a Gibson, and because
Yeah.
of the magnets on the outer edge, and it's
It's taking its form.
it's taking the form of the top. It's riding the curve of the top,
Yeah.
and the call for underneath is holding your cleat,
Yeah.
and the cleat's bending to match the top, as opposed to you forcing the top flat to match the call.
Precisely. Yeah,
That's
so it just bends. It's great on sides. You can use it on any guitar's back because they're all radius too. And
Sure.
everything just lines up just so the exact same system that TJ has been describing, identical.
Yeah.
You just use this and if I want to clamp something, if I am worried that it's not going to line up, you can clamp on these. You just have to watch out because the clamps always want to grab to the magnets really fast and throw you
Right.
off. But
Yeah.
you can clamp this if you wanted to, and there's plexi in there. This plexi is just TJ's thing is like, I don't know if it's an eighth or 100th thou or something. And then I have
Yeah.
plexi calls comfortably thick. Sometimes I'll use even thinner plexi. Hang on. Sometimes I'll use like crazy thin plexi if I need something that's really, really flexible. I have this stuff, and then I have like a 32nd. Oh, that's 260. I have it in 64th and 32nd thicknesses, and sometimes the 32nd is great for that too. Anyways, but he's not here telling you about his back crack system, but it's at least as useful as the top crack system. And there's a lot of guitars out there that have radiuses that, you know, that are a little too much radius than what TJ's system can afford to. So you can still use the cleats, which are magic, and this plexi stuff, which is magic.
So Mark, can you hear
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
How do you deal with like that system that you just described doesn't get you over tone bars? So how do
Yeah.
you deal with that? Like,
So it takes this. There's a much longer setup.
yeah,
process.
yeah. Because you still want them to look like they grew there, right? And that
Yeah,
they're lined
you want
up.
them. And so
Yeah.
what I do then is I have, I wasn't expecting to be on this, so my stuff is not right near me, but I have pieces of this plastic, cut precisely to the spaces between them. And then on the outside of the guitar, I have a long piece of plexi with magnets located where they need to be. And so
Yeah.
you'll glue up the crack, and then you put your long plexi on there, and you go in and you do the first one
Oh,
furthest
so you
away,
have
and the second one, and the third one.
Yeah, I
You
see.
have your long call on the outside being your indexer because of the magnets, rather than having a fence to line them all up. Because I was originally thinking you'd probably just have a fence to line them up, but if you
Yeah,
got
no, you have
your call,
the long thing, and then you have your magnets all lined up in a nice row, so everything
you're
you're still
letting
gluing
the
it all at
magnets
once, and
set
it
themselves in,
still
yeah.
looks like one piece that just happens to be intersected by the tone bars, just like the back raft on any acoustic
Yeah.
when you look inside the back, the exact same thing.
That's fantastic. That's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it works
Here-
great.
Here's an extreme example that Mark made last time he was in my shop. This is a piece of pickguard material on the back, and then I've got boxes of these magnets around. But look at this thing,
Oh, look at that.
crazy. This is
You
for like a long side crack, like in the
Yeah,
lower
it's
bout or
great for
something.
side cracks that you can't align. Yeah. Like who
Hey-
wants to clamp a side crack? What a pain in the butt, right? So this naturally
Yeah.
just aligns everything perfectly, and you high glue it together, and they line up perfectly flat and level. So you don't have annoying misalignment side cracks with clamps in the way, and you can't fix it.
Hey, you used my super rare valuable pickguard material. Hold on a second. What's up? Oh man.
Hey,
All right.
Hey, Mark, can I ask you? At Fretboard Journal, I remember you saying something about going off brand from hide glue on adhesives for cracks from time to time. Do I remember correctly? You're okay with using epoxy every once in a while on maybe recalcitrant cracks that.
Yeah. If you got something that's gappy and isn't gonna work, like there's no glue on earth that's actually gonna close that crack, and you have to fill it somehow or another. You know, and the guitar, and you're confident with your skills, etc. Epoxying the crack is an option. Maybe we'll let TJ talk about this because he's the guy that taught me all about it. So-
I have no rules. I use anything. Like those museum curator people drive me nuts. I'm a consultant to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, and I have to stay out of the instrument department. They'll take me down there sometimes, and you have to wear a special outfit. You have to put on special gloves. You have to put on a mask, and then they pull out this guitar that I've got 3 of them around here that people gave me as wall hangers, and they'll pull out one of those and say, "Now, how do you think we should approach this?" I'm like, "I'll just give you another one." You know, but they want to know what special glue we're going to use. I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" It's a sad life those people have. But I'm not a purist like that. I use anything. Like on these vintage guitars, epoxy is tricky, but if it's a crack that never ever, you don't ever want it to come apart, who cares? What I care about is the result. And if you make it go away so that nobody can even tell, then use the glue that's going to work.
You betcha. Yeah, I have long been agnostic when it comes to glue.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, it's in my attitude, it's whatever gets the job done and whatever gets you, as long as the results are there, it almost doesn't matter. Almost every glue on the planet, with the exception of the stuff they use on Post-it notes, is gonna be stronger than the wood.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
at the end of the
I
day,
have a post on my Instagram where I was repairing the lower bout on a I think a D18. It was just crushed here. It's
Mhm.
broken in, I don't know, 20 different places. And in that post, you can see me with the super glue bottle hosing it down. So, you know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm on record.
Yep, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
sue me.
That makes me delightfully happy to hear that.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
Could you, TJ and Mark, thanks for being here. Could you both talk about if you have a number or the number of a width of a crack where you decide to go from just high glue or just epoxy or a splint? Like, is
That's
it
all-
10 thou is epoxy, 15 thou becomes a splint?
Is that Bo?
Yeah. Hello.
Hey,
That is Bo.
Hi,
how's
nice
it going,
to meet
mate?
you.
Nice to hear your voice.
Good. Thanks for all the magnet.
Yeah, that's a really important question. I'm going to let Mark do
No.
that.
Oh, this is TJ's talk. I was just hiding. What the heck?
Yeah,
Bo, it's everything is different. You just have to make that choice to your best judgment is how I'd answer that. I use hide glue every chance I can. And if a crack doesn't close, then it's whatever trick you're gonna
sometimes
throw
I
it
think
that's
it's
gonna
also
work.
trial and error, is it not? Like, you know, I think sometimes a cleat, just because the amount of work isn't, or not a cleat, sometimes doing a splint because the amount of work that's involved is always the last resort, you know, that you wind up painting yourself into the corner of doing because everything else didn't work, you know,
Yeah.
up to that. You know,
I agree
sometimes
with you.
it's a matter of
Yeah.
trying to get the results, you know, before making a decision, and the decision sometimes gets made for you.
but it was a nuanced question. He was asking how wide is the right width when you start that. And Bo, were you here when I showed the G28 that had the cracks that were 1/16 of an inch open wide?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would have said in the old days before that guitar, I would have said a 1/16 of an inch, but I proved to myself that with patience, the reason I did it is because that guitar is so valuable that I knew I could add 20 grand to the sale price if it was worth taking 3 months. But this is what happens in the violin repair world where it's $1 million violin. It doesn't matter if it's 6 months to do this one crack. So I applied the same philosophy to this guitar, and I just gave myself 3 months. And I noticed it kept getting a percentage better. The first month it was a little bit better. I was pretty sure. The second month I was sure it was better. And I thought, well, if it's getting better, how long will it keep getting better? So by month 3, it was swollen enough. I decided I'm going to glue it. So
What do you have a
but
dimension?
I would have answered that question differently before I had a guitar that I thought I could increase the value of 20 grand. I would have said 1/16 of an inch. You should splint it. But I was, I swelled both of those back together, and with this cleat system, held it together.
What do you remember?
So
what
so
the
now I
dimension
would
was
say
for-
an eighth. I would say try to swell an 1/8 inch crack down, 60 thousandths closer, cleat it, and then splint it.
Yeah.
That's the other nice thing about this system. You can cleat it and then splint it after, and it's super stable.
But you weren't, when you humidified it 3 months, you weren't over humidifying it. You were just keeping it in a humidified environment that was
Right. I just it was passive. I just put a damp sponge in a little bowl. Yeah.
So I want to interject something here, just because I get the opportunity to do it live and in front of everybody. Plus, I get to put them on the spot. Mark, you just blew me away with that little tip for the side and the back crack thing and stuff like that. I would like to enlist you to come back when we do a segment on back and side cracks.
Happy to, sure. But that's TJ's creation. So I was just using it.
You get to take credit for it because you did such a
I can sign into correcting.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you.
Mark's got an excellent YouTube video on that system on back cracks, which I've watched about 6 times just because it's a pleasure to watch. So everyone should watch that.
Thanks, Bo.
Yeah, I need to spend more time on YouTube.
Or not.
Well, I think, so does anybody have any questions about this whole crack system that I'm so jazzed about getting into doing?
Before we do that, can I show you one other thing?
Oh, of course.
Since it's my channel today, my program. So I want to show you. And while Mark's here, because I've told him about this, but he hasn't seen it. And I thought I'd just share it with all you. I'm going to grab that D28 again. Hold on a second.
Okay. We also have a rock star joining us, Seal. Seal just sat down. Say hello, Seal.
Hello,
Hey, Seal.
Seal. Nice art stop.
Hi, thanks.
Right on.
Thanks.
So you may be wondering what happened to this D28. How did all this stuff happen? How did all this cracks and damage happen? Another thing that happened is, do you see this? Can you see this spot down here? This red.
Yeah.
I think what happened is, been doing guitar forensic on this for 8 months, and I think it leaned up against the wall in a case in the basement that flooded.
Right.
And it was up to tension, and I think the string tension is what caused all the cracks, and the neck caved into the sound hole. That's what I think this is. I think it's the stain from the case.
It could be. I've seen cases, situations where that's from moisture, where people, we all have those customers who get religion about humidity and then they go overboard and create like a sauna in a closet.
Yeah.
Where a guitar is sitting up and all of the condensation, everything runs down. It looks like water ran to the bottom of that guitar and stained it and allowed the color of the case probably to impregnate the finish there.
Yeah, I was thinking of something like that too. So here's the reason I'm showing you this. Look at this. It was the same on this side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is another $10,000 upgrade.
That's
So
crazy.
I got my scraper blades out and I went to scrape this off because I assumed it was all the way to the wood. And instead I thought, well, again, one of these just sold for over 200 grand. I better be conservative. So instead of scraping the finish off and refinishing it, which was going to look like hell, almost as bad as that, I got out a roll of paper towels and my little bottle of naphtha, and I started wiping it. And I said, oh, there's a little bit of red on the paper towel.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, well, if there's a little bit of red, maybe. So I scrubbed for 2 hours and I got it all out. So anyway, I mentioned this to you in case you ever come across this, because I can't, it blew my mind that I was about to scrape the original finish off, and I stopped myself and said, well, I thought there's no way it's ever going to work, but it's gone. So I'm going to do the other side whenever I have a spare, or maybe when Mark comes to visit, I'll have him work on that.
Awesome.
But
Thanks.
anyway, I just thought that was a miracle and wanted to share that with you. And of course, the owner of the guitar, who's going to get the extra 10 grand, thought it was a miracle.
So how much did you get?
What
how much,
what are you charging for rubbing 10 grand back onto a guitar for? You getting like you getting half of that, right? Was that 5 grand for 2
well,
hours of rubbing?
the service is free, but the bottle of naphtha is $15,000.
Well, we'll have to see how much Mark charges me when he gets it for doing the other half. All right. So now, sorry to interrupt, but you were asking, are there any questions about this stuff? And I'm happy to answer it. And it looks like Mark is not getting accosted by his shop coworkers yet, so he may be able to help answer.
I had one
I
question.
said I don't have a question, but I will say, I just got your top correction kit and used it on a Martin, and it worked fabulously. And I've been using your top corrector kit now for like 6 or 7. Well, I guess about 6 years. I'm in
wow.
Utah, so we're all kinds of cracks.
Yeah.
I've got 20 or so of the lower pieces I've made of different variations, but yeah, cool stuff, man.
Oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. That's a nice endorsement. So you're not going to give me a 1-star review at Stu Mac then?
No, if I could give you 12, I would. Like,
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
I
one
just got
thing-
the back crack system, so I'm going to be trying that out here shortly. I've got
Okay.
a Civil War Martin that I'm going to be gluing some crackbacks with.
Oh, perfect. Well, one thing I should have said this up front, a kind of disclaimer that it could sound to some of you 70 folks listening in that I'm trying to sell this thing. I am not trying to sell this. Please do not buy it, because if you buy it, I'm going to have to make it, and it's a pain in the ass to make this stuff. So I just keep doing it because I love the results. And I was thinking about talking about this in a series on Facebook or Instagram, but I've never patented anything. Instead of patenting it, I just make things that no one in their right mind would ever try to remake.
I
You know,
agree.
and-
So
and
I
if-
have actually, I don't know if you ever tried this or not, but I actually cut my own cleats with a laser cutter.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So you can set it to engrave, and I actually engraved the curvature of the top, and then so I thickness it down, set it to engrave the curvature, and then just cut the outline. So I just use a laser cutter and can cut them all day long.
Oh, interesting. Well, I would just caution you about getting the grain oriented correctly. That's the secret sauce to those things.
Right.
But yeah, as long as the grain is right, that could work.
Yeah.
Hey, TJ, it's Evan. I texted Eric Coleman, and he said that his high IQ is only relative to tool recognition. That's
okay. That's awesome.
Oddly specific.
Did
learned something.
Extra Crispy had a question if I heard correctly?
I do. So as far as hide glue squeeze out, when after you clamp those things together, do you have use any release agent, or do you have any problems with the hide glue adhering to the calls when you take it apart?
I'm a fan of hide glue squeeze out. Although, if you're getting a lot, you probably have too much glue. You want just a small amount. You don't want so much that you have to get in there and try to clean it out. So
Right.
if you've got a lot, I would say, but I've never, even if it gets on the call will pop right out. It's not going to adhere to the plastic. So there's never been an issue.
You talking about clean it, squeeze out on the inside from under the calls?
But I
think
would
he
say
was,
mostly on the top,
you were worried about locking your calls to the top, right? Like by having
Yes.
the squeeze out and get between.
No.
He's wondering if you use anything like, do you wax up your calls or
No,
put wax
never-
paper in there or
never.
anything?
Never been an issue. It's not going to stick to the hide glue. The plastic will pop right off.
thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions out there?
Plus, it seems to me that this call for the top, wherever I put mine, I've been playing with them while you've been. I don't even know where I put it.
I got a question. While you look for that, Doug.
Sure.
You said we've had that crack corrector for a very long time. You sent it to us like I think right when it first came out. I've used it a billion times. It's great. Don't listen to TJ when he says don't buy it. You should buy it. Everyone should buy it. It's great.
Wait, who is this? I got to send you a check.
All right. Yeah. This is Mike Haynerhoff. I work at Elderly Instruments. So go ahead. You can make a
Oh,
check.
hey, Mike.
Out to me, Haynerhoff. It's just the way
Okay.
it's spelled, just the way it sounds.
Okay.
You said that the grain orientation, I have to make those myself all the time because naturally when you have like 8 people in a shop, every time you go to a drawer to use that thing, all the cleats are blocked.
Yeah.
But you said triple bias is something about the grain orientation. So are they not quartered? I know they're diagonal, but are they quartered or are they?
No, they are not quartered. And I'm glad Mark is here now because that was his term. I loved it. When he introduced it in the video, he said, triple bias. I thought, oh, I got to steal that. So they're the opposite of quarter. It starts with a piece of wood that's on the 45. So I'm using reject wood, which helps me financially a little bit. But yeah, so it's a little hard to explain, but it's 45 degrees on the end, and then it's cut at an angle. It's cut out of the board at an angle.
Right. Yeah, we make them out of like the most garbage top wood you could possibly buy, so they're not super corded, so they're a little bit like.
But
that,
how do you add the curve to it? How are you putting the radius in the top?
Well, I cut them into strips, and then I stick it on the end of a board. And I take it to a standing belt sander. And
Perfect. Okay, gotcha. And it's working okay. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it on everything. I've used it on an Ovation.
Okay. Well, yeah. Please don't use mine on the Ovations.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
but heads up, Mike. I'm not going to be signing those cleats. those won't be hand signed by me.
Of course.
All right, but yeah, Ovation, that's perfect. And send me, if you don't mind, send me a picture sometime. I'd love to see how that comes out.
Sure.
Yeah, because you guys haven't done a shop video on that, right?
I think Joe might have used it in a video that he did at some point.
Okay.
But yeah, high glue is the key. It just works great.
That's what you found too. And are you using the Northfield clamps?
We have those. We've actually got even better. We've got the old Waverleys that are those are. Do you use a different concentration high glue wise when you're doing the cleat portion, or do you just use it?
That's a really good question. I use the one that's least moldy.
Good call.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is really Mark's area of expertise. He's helped me to sort of hone my high glue skills, and he's more persnickety about it than I am. So he's kind of taught me a little bit more than I knew before about how to mix it and how to store it and how long to store it. But I used to use just about anything. But not stuff that smelled bad or was moldy, though. That's where I drew the line. Okay. But Mark, you want to talk about that for a second? That's a really good question. Why don't you unmute there, and like, how long will you leave something in the refrigerator before you say, I mean, as long as like a yogurt, let's say, or
no, so
or more like ketchup.
Let me grab a high glue bottle. Hang on a second. We keep our glue in these lab bottles. This is one that was in my pot just now. It was made in January. And basically what I find is if you put it back into the fridge when it's hot, when you seal it back up and you put it straight into the fridge from 140 degrees, it kind of cans itself as if you're canning pickles or jam or something right like that. And it preserves it for a long time.
That's cool. So it seals it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like each time you reheat it up and then put it back in the fridge, you're not dealing with the sort of bacterial problem that happens to make things go moldy and bad. If you let it get to room temperature and then put it in the fridge, yeah, it's going to go moldy quickly like any other food would. because it's essentially just
That's
food.
that's a
But
good trick.
however, I don't like reheating it and using it over and over again for important jobs. Like if I'm going to glue a bridge on, I don't use one that I've ever used before. I get a fresh one that's gelled and it looks like, you know, crumbly gelled hide glue, and I'll use that to glue a bridge on. The stuff that goes back in and out of the fridge, I'll attach a neck on with this, or I'll do a crack repair with this, or anything that doesn't require the crazy amount of shear strength that a bridge reglue would use. Because it's perfectly good for a very long time. You could reheat it time and time and time again. Just don't use it for a bridge. Use fresh stuff for a bridge. And I bought a 50-pound bag, like, I don't know, like 20 years ago or something. I was reading frets.com, and whatever Frank Ford said, what he used on frets, I just went and bought a 50-pound bag of it. It's like Milligan and Higgins 256, I think. And we're like, you know, 2/3 of the way through that bag now. I'll probably have to start thinking about it when I'm 60 to get more of it. But yeah, I don't, and if it's drippy thin, like I want it to be like, you know, like wet maple syrup, that's the thickness that I want, or hot maple syrup. And if it's too thick, I'll sometimes add a bit of water to it, again, for like a crack repair or something. As long as, like, you can feel it in your hands if it's working or not. Just put a bit in your fingers and you'll know, you know, in 30 seconds if this is tacky enough to use. But
you see what I mean?
Yeah, I'm no high glue scientist. That's as in depth as I get with the stuff.
But you see what I mean? He's a madman.
My question for you regarding the sealing in the bottle, you say it kind of cans itself. Is that because of the condensation in the bottle, or do you think it's just because the glue itself is creating its own seal on the cap?
No. I mean, it's hot when you put it away, and as it cools, there's a vacuum created. Like what happens when you're canning fruit, right? Like when you make fruit, you have to like put your bottle in the boiling water, and you carefully put your lids on and don't touch them, and then the lids go whoop, and they pop down.
And that's a glass bottle you're using, or
yeah, it's a lab supply bottle. And so these are airtight seals on them. Now, it's not really canning it, but it certainly is helping it be preserved longer, you know? And yeah, if there's mold in there, or if it smells bad, toss it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. That's a really good tip. I have a pro tip to follow up with that one. I find that if you don't date it, it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah, nice.
So I'd be careful about that dating thing. But he's practicing what he's preaching. That bottle has a date on it. We saw that he didn't just put that on there now for the video.
So when you mix up a new batch for, say, doing a bridge reglue, you'll then take what's left over and it goes into the fridge as a fresh lab bottle.
I'll show you. TJ, talk for a minute. I'll be right back. Hang on.
Okay. Yeah, the problem I have is I have 5 or 6 different bottles in the refrigerator, and I lose track of which one was for what. So you know, I say to myself, "Oh, I'll remember this," and I'm like, "Oh, because this bottle, for instance, is hexagonal," and I think, "Oh, I'll remember that one." But then I get in there, I'm like, "I don't know which bottle that was." So I just open it up and smell it, and if it smells fresh, I'll use it. But not for bridge gluing. Like Mark's got me convinced that you really need to use fresh glue for bridge gluing. So that's where I draw the line. But putting necks on and stuff, I'll use whatever I have in there. It's not moldy.
For sure. So this is what I do. We have ratios on the jar that has all our hide glue in there. And every month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, we'll make a batch. And normally we make this 90 milliliters of water and 50 grams of glue. The nice thing about water, if you know the metric system, is that 1 milliliter of water equals 1 gram of weight. So you just really have to measure 50 grams of glue on a scale and then add another 90 grams to it, and then your ratio will be fine. You don't need to measure things because ounces are annoying. Anyway, so we make this little
You're
dish.
talking to an American here that's very proud of their ounces.
so you make a dish. You know, I've got like a little dish, and we fill it up. It's like a soup bowl, and we put our stuff in there, and we let it gel up for a couple hours until it is, you know, like Jello, and then we cut it apart and into like 8, like I'll slice it like a pizza, and I'll divide all that into these jars. Right there it is, right there. So that's a brand new one that was made in January, hasn't been used yet. It's been in the fridge since January, and it's perfectly fine like that for a while. It will eventually go moldy too, but our fridge is nice and cold. Right. And then when I'm going to do a bridge, I'll grab a brand new one from the fridge.
So you're not necessarily mixing fresh for every bridge?
No, God, no. That's so labor intensive. Forget about it. We do it every couple months, and then basically we have to make new stuff when we have no more fresh stuff left and we have to glue a bridge on. Is when we have to make more high glue. Right. And so, and at home I've got, because we're not, I have a shop at home I do a lot of my work at. I have smaller bottles and I have smaller quantities in there and just more of them, which works great too. But because we're much more high production here, we need these bigger bottles and more high glue, because there's 3 glue pots going all the time around here.
Sure.
But we use high glue for everything. Like the only thing I don't use high glue for is when I have to glue a pickguard back on a guitar. Beyond that, it's high glue for every job.
Wow. Mark, I'm glad you brought this up. This reminds me of another pro tip. I think I'm going to sell this on my website. This is what I use.
Nice.
Right? So you just put glue to the line and then add water to the line.
There you go.
DJ, that seems like a really gooey ratio. Is that a more than 1-to-1 ratio of glue?
No,
to
it's
water?
the one that Mark told me. It's the one that Mark told me to use. So that's why I do it, and it's great. But this is proprietary, so please don't steal this and use it for yourself. No, I just mixed it enough that I figured out it's the same. It's the same every time. So I actually put the glue up to here, dump it into something else. Then I fill the water up to there and dump that. I do the glue first for obvious reasons. And then I let it dry before I use it the next time.
Can you 3D print?
Yeah, I 3D printed this one. It looks like a regular cup, but I spent 20 hours programming this.
Dan, you got anything to say about all this glue and cracks and stuff business?
You guys use tap water for your glue?
Oh, excellent question. That's another thing that Mark talked to me about, and I don't anymore. I used to. I use filtered water now.
I use distilled water.
Oh, do you use distilled?
I don't want the chlorine in the water having a negative effect on the glue, on the long-term life of the glue. If it's chlorinated, I don't know. I'm no scientist, but give me pure water and I'll use that. It makes more sense to me.
I have a reverse osmosis water system, so I just take it out of that. But before I used to use tap water, and then, well, I'll tell you what I'm avoiding saying. My bridges were coming off. Like I had some bridges come off, and I talked to Mark about it. I said, "How often do your bridges come off?" And he said, "Never." And I was like, "Oh, come on."
His bridges have screws in them. Mark's bridges have screws in them.
Okay, he's back. He's back. Stop talking about it. Oh wait, Mark, you're muted.
Mark, you're muted.
You're muted.
What do you got there, Mark?
Sorry about that. So I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. This is the tool that I want StewMac to make again.
Toothing iron. I love
the
those.
toothing iron. And it's a great tool. And so when TJ was telling me that I don't ever have bridges lift off, like it just doesn't happen on the stuff that I do. And
are you attributing that to the toothing iron?
I'm attributing that to a few things. So number one is making sure that my fit is like stupidly perfect.
Right.
Obviously. But I don't want to be clamping wings down that are bunging up. Right. I don't want to clamp anything into shape. I want it just to lie there perfectly like a sheet on a bed. Just so that's number one. Number two, fresh high glue. Number three, a top that's ready for it all and cleaned properly. But I do think that this makes a huge difference. If you look at any vintage guitar, they scratch the surface with texture. Now, I think those guys had a clue how to use high glue much more than us newbies in 2024. They were using it all the time, and every Martin bridge, every liner, every block, every fingerboard extension, they're all toothed with a toothing iron.
Do you have
And so,
the big
yeah,
ones?
it's the big one's cool. I don't have a big one. I made, I got an old plane and just like made one.
Yeah, that's
I
smart.
chopped a plane blade apart. But StewMac doesn't make this anymore. And
I
now,
don't know why. I wish they would.
now like Jay is gone, and I was bugging Jay to make these, but he retired instead. So I'm
Probably
working
got
on them
tired of you
still.
bugging him.
I know. Anyways, these are great. And I think that's a really important ingredient. Of course, you got to go with the grain. Don't be one of those idiots that makes crisscross hatch marks all over stuff. That's like the stupidest thing in the world. With the grain and just a little bit. And I think it helps a lot with hide glue.
Do you think they could make
Alternatively,
it?
you could do what I do, which is this thing. So this is a toothing plane blade. I
Okay.
don't know if you can see that. And you can I use it like this. I just pull it over the bridge. And then
Okay.
after talking to Mark about this and trying to dial in on this, because I don't want bridges coming off, it's annoying. I bought one of these on eBay.
What is that?
I know it seems like, how could you use this on a bridge? But I do. I put the bridge in a vise and just run this over the bottom of the bridge. It's incredible. This is a toothing plane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I sharpened it up really nice. And I don't know, you maybe can't see that, but it actually has a toothing plane blade in it.
Oh my
So I
goodness.
shoot this over the bottom of the bridge like this, and voila. Amazing.
I think didn't Frank Ford on frets.com and his hide glue thing, didn't he kind of go against toothing? I wonder if that's why StewMac quit selling those, because he kind of came out hard against toothing.
He's probably
Maybe I'm
talking about that
misremembering
he's probably talking about that crisscrossing thing that Mark was talking about. What is that guitar? I just got one of those in.
Yeah, it was it was like a D28 with a bridge that was all crisscross like that.
Mark, do you size the spruce at all? Do you like
I don't. I think it's not a bad idea, but I've never done it. I mean, violin guys do that all the time, but they're sizing things and then just putting a hot knife through so it clamp, to reactivate it. But we got we can just put glue on glue and call it done. I've never bothered sizing.
Where'd TJ go?
I think
I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that guitar that had that crisscrossing thing in it.
Don't tooth the spruce,
Mark,
people.
Mark, can you bring it up on your phone and send it to Ian? He might be able to put it on the screen.
The picture that you sent me?
Yeah, can you?
You're
using your computer. I'm on my phone.
I see.
Send it to my email. Ian.
Everyone has seen what you're talking about.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily know that
you're basically talking about, like, here's your piece of spruce, and they're doing this stupidity on your spruce. Like, that's what you're talking about. Like, you make these, like, you see it all the time. People like make these 45-degree hatch marks on their wood before they glue it together, like it's a piece of cardboard.
Doing that on the top?
On any glue surface. Like, we see it under bridges all the time.
Can you bring up the picture, Mark?
I'll try.
I can't do it very easily.
I'll see if I'm technically savvy enough to do that.
That's just making your own run out, isn't it?
Yeah, it's making your own run out. It's stupid.
This picture really depicts it well. I have that guitar around here somewhere. I just can't remember which one it is. If I could find the bridge, that would help too. But it's really worth talking about because it really ruins the top. And people seem to have no idea. We see it all the time. But I think that's what they think they're doing. They think they're using it, that they're creating the same thing that the toothing plane does. And they're really destroying the guitar. But just in case it's one of the 70 people here, we really need to get through to them and ask them to stop.
So you're going with the grain and not cutting any cross grain fibers, basically.
Correct.
Oh, so you are toothing the top, but just with the grain.
With the grain.
And
lightly. Yeah.
Oh, so you're toothing both the bridge and the top?
Yes.
Yep.
Really? Because I've only ever toothed the bridge.
Yeah,
but that's how you create the crosshatch. That's what this guy's doing when he's cutting through the spruce. He's creating that crosshatch pattern that he thinks is what's going to help the bridge stay on, and instead he's destroying the top by cutting across the spruce grain lines, and then they just rip off.
Right.
the sections of spruce just rip off.
Here, I found it.
Okay.
Ian, you want me to text this to you?
If you could send it to my email, it's probably gonna be better.
Okay.
Did I send you just one picture, Mark, or two?
I have the one picture. Yeah.
Okay. Does it have the bridge in it too?
How about I do this?
That works. A little closer still.
See the,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
see
yeah,
that.
yeah. So that's the bridge. Move over to the top. Let's. Oh no, that is the top. Okay, I
Yeah.
see. Yeah.
That's-
So the
that's not
sections
even
of this
you can see the
sections of the
whoops.
spruce came right off.
Yeah, you can see the spruce stuck to the bridge. I don't want to touch my phone because it's going to change everything.
Yeah.
But down.
Yeah,
I
right where
can't
you
do
could
it.
predict that it would, because he cut
It's
right
like a-
through the.
It's
Yeah.
like a houndstooth pattern.
Yeah, it just destroys the spruce and it comes off in sheets, and then you've got no length to your grain anymore. It's like having a top with like the world's worst run out that you're gluing a bridge to. It's just terrible. And it's run out in both directions at the same time. It's awful. And they
I
just
don't
shear
know
right
why
off.
it never occurred to, I mean, I've never toothed the spruce part of a top. I mean,
But you don't, if you're not using high glue, it doesn't matter. Modern glues, you don't need to tooth anything.
right, it's true, yeah.
It's just a hide glue thing because hide glue is so much of its strength is a shrinkage thing. It's kind of like an epoxy that if you give it something to grab onto, it shrinks around it and
Right.
seizes it tight, right? And so you give it that texture and it just shrinks into it, and you get some great mechanical strength that way.
Hmm.
But in case other people are wondering, I have no idea how Mark does that with a file. This thing, I can pull it, on the spruce top without. I don't know how you do that with a file.
With this
I
thing,
mean, yeah. How do you?
this is a
lay
toothing
that-
iron blade that was laser cut into a smaller thing.
Oh, I thought you had a Stumac file.
I do. I have the Stumac toothing iron. The Stumac one is way better. Look at the teeth, the tooth
Oh,
pattern.
so you actually pull it the way I do, like this?
Mhm.
Yeah, this just gets pulled.
Oh, you just use the end. Okay, I thought you were using it like a file, flat.
And then this guy, the Stumac one, the way I have it ground, I use this on the push, low angle push.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's whatever. You can use it however you want, as long as the end result is the same. It's fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Are you both doing that under the fingerboard extension and on the spruce under the fingerboard extension as well?
Do you want to answer that, TJ?
Not a chance. They did that, but I would never do that because I want that thing to come off. And I'm wrecking tops all the time trying to get that stupid extension off.
So
Oh,
I
that
have
feels
a
good.
it's a nightmare.
That feels good to hear.
Yeah,
I
it's a
have a
nightmare.
quick question for you guys. My impression has always been that hide glue is really a molecular thickness surface and in terms of adhesion, and that it has essentially no gap filling properties. What's the point of grooving the surface where the bottom side of those two of where the top and the bridge meet, because you're giving up adhesion area?
This is exactly what I said to Mark when he was telling me about toothing.
And I said, I'm not a scientist and I can't explain it, but it works. It's one of those things. Like my bridges don't come off. This is how I do it. So what's the only difference? It's not like I'm a better craftsman than TJ. I'm doing this one thing that he wasn't doing, and his bridges are coming off and mine weren't. And
So
now
I
since he
added
started
that.
doing it, he doesn't have bridges popping off anymore.
Yeah, fascinating.
We
talked about it. We talked about it in some depth, and we could make our brains understand how it was creating pockets of adhesion. I mean, I know the way hide glue works is I always thought you just wanted perfectly mated surfaces, but somehow like that crosshatch thing is creating pockets of glue that's making it even stronger.
Interesting.
But I agree with Mark that there's a reason they did it, or they would not have spent all that time creating all those toothing patterns on everything. I mean, certainly we know about how they did veneers, right? They hammered those veneers. That would never stick without a toothing plane. You couldn't hammer veneer to a flat surface without a toothing plane.
Michael,
So that's how I understand it. But
Michael, was that information that you got off of frets.net? Because that was what I remember, almost verbatim what I remember Frank's treatise on the subject was, and I always wondered if where he got that from, like if he sourced that from somewhere else. Did you get that from somewhere else, or did you get that from Frank's website?
If you're asking Michael Minton, yeah, it would have been from him. You mean in terms of the molecular level?
Yeah, just the information.
Yeah,
I was just wondering if
and
that came from
no,
Fred.
No gap filling. That's why when I use hide glue to glue like X braces or something, I shoot for just, perfect surfaces on there.
I think just instinctually, I feel like there's a difference between gap filling and toothing, though. Like that, it seems like kind of two different things. I would like to, if Frank was still around, we could certainly ask him to clarify. But I'll do a little more research on that and see if I can track down anybody else saying the same thing, because I always wondered about that. Because I did, like everybody else, you pull off a ton of Martin fingerboards and stuff, and they are all toothed like crazy. So
I was once gluing a bridge on a Martin, like an 015, 60s 015, and I went to the bridge was lifting at the wings, and I took off the bridge, and lo and behold, the entire footprint of that bridge, the entire footprint was like a skating rink of epoxy. The entire footprint, like the last guy took off the bridge and destroyed the top everywhere, and they just infilled it with epoxy and leveled it, and somehow or another stuck a bridge on top, and the bridge didn't hold. And so all that was left, the bridge came right off, was just this epoxy. I'm like, well, what the heck? I'm going to just try something. And I toothed the crap out of this bridge, out of the epoxy. Like I scratched it as if it was going to be epoxied, and I toothed the bridge, and I stuck it on with hide glue. Hide glue to epoxy, like, that should not work, right? That should fall apart. That guitar belongs to a musician, and I see them using it still 10 years later on television, with that bridge hide glued on. So,
I would be biting my nails every time I saw it.
I know. What the heck, right? I said, this is no guarantee. No guarantee this is going to fall off, but we're going to try it, because otherwise you need a new top. And it's still on there. So who the heck knows? I don't understand it. I just do it. And if I'm going to keep doing it as long as it works.
Mark, that brings up a really good question about, like, I see guys like constantly like scabbing in like little sections of spruce over wallered out bridge footprints, and I just think, boy, that's got such a low probability. It just feels like, I don't have any data, of course, to support it, but it feels like it has a low probability of success. Whereas where you have like a nice, uniform surface where that epoxy has penetrated, the spruce to the best of its ability, it seems like that, just instinctually, that feels like a higher probability of a good outcome. So
yeah, for sure.
Can you speak to that at all? Like, do you have any
in this case? In this case, TJ is my mentor in this one. Like everything that I do on bridge pad area repair, I've learned from that guy. So he should talk about it.
Oh, I wasn't listening. What's the question?
The distinguished gentleman from Massachusetts has been.
Sorry, I was thinking about something else, and we'll get to your question. But Michael's example is not analogous. He's talking about spruce braces on a spruce top. To me, we're talking about ebony glued on spruce, which is different.
Good.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah.
You understand? You know what I mean? Like, I think I glue my braces on my spruce tops with no planing, and never had one come off. But spruce to spruce is, I'm saying, is different than ebony to spruce. And it's the ebony to spruce that's under tremendous stress, 160 pounds of tension, where I was having the issue and start to pull off. So that's why I was at the point of like, if you have 2 of those happen a year, you're wasting 4 hours. I can't afford to waste 4 hours putting a bridge back on. So that's where Mark came in, and I started applying his, I was applying the same idea that I was with the spruce braces, where I wanted perfect gluing surfaces, to the ebony, and it wasn't working for me. So I changed it up and started doing the toothing, and now they're not coming off.
Yeah.
But I don't tooth the spruce to spruce.
Yeah, so
TJ.
I remember, I think it was in the Journal of American Lutherie a few years back, there was a table in terms of adhesion strength of various glues with a mixture of, the woods that were being glued, and it was very interesting. And I think it was consistent with what you were saying, TJ, that there are some pretty remarkable differences in terms of homogeneity and heterogeneity when you're mixing different woods. And I think spruce to spruce would be a good example of what was at the top of the list in terms of the strength of that bond overall.
Well, that's what I found.
Makes
Well,
sense.
I know what words I'm going to be looking up after the episode today.
Okay, now we need to also find out why Mark's got a Gretsch hanging on his wall back there. What's that about?
Stupid guitars. Hate these guitars.
Yeah.
This is your work, Ian. I almost sent it to you to rebind this whole guitar.
No,
Oh
I did my last one five ones ago.
This is the last, never, ever, ever again. I'm done. Rebind it and don't touch my original finish.
You rebound that?
Enough. What's that?
You rebound that?
Yeah. Now I just have to carve the heel cap and then I got to shoot finish on it.
Did you take the neck off or?
Yeah, it needed a reset too. So the neck came off also. So never again. I thankfully, no longer need to do those jobs. So I refuse them from here on, which is great.
Yeah.
The way TJ refuses any Martin made after 1944. That's great.
That's good cut off.
Was that a public announcement, Mark? I think it was.
Oh, please. Well, we'll still take them on because there's two other guys here that can that can do that.
I have a question here from I think it was from Aaron Jones. He said, "Can we go over the details of toothing with the grain versus crosshatching again? Because I was taught crosshatch, so I'm one of those idiots." Which
all right, well, we're proud of you for.
I would never.
It's the first step.
Yeah,
right? It's the first step.
The first step is shame.
Is admitting your addiction. Just go with the grain. That's it. It's a good life policy. Like, just go with the grain.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. Let me ask you a question about that, because if you're when I learned how to do this, and over the years, of course, we all evolve in our thinking about these things, but I was always of the practice of using a toothing iron on the bridge, but not the top. It was when I was using hide glue. If you're going with the grain on a bridge, you're going cross grain to the top when you tooth it, and on the top, you're going with the grain on the top, which is opposite of where the bridge is. So if you have both surfaces toothed, you have this going against that. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
You're creating the cross-hatching. You are cross-hatching. You're getting the effect that he's.
But I've never toothed both sides of the wood, but if you're toothing the grain of the spruce lengthwise with the top, and then you're toothing the bridge, with the grain of the bridge, you're definitely
But you're not affecting. You're not breaking wood. Yeah, you're not breaking the grain.
Okay.
Like the glue is non-directional. The glue doesn't have grain. It doesn't care what it's sticking to, right? As long as you don't cut through your grain of your spruce. I think it's less important to do the spruce because spruce pore structure is so much bigger than a hardwood like ebony, right? Yeah. Ebony, like, good luck trying to find the pores in ebony. Like, you got to open something up for the glue to actually attach to the ebony, whereas spruce, you can probably get away with not doing anything to spruce. A little 180 grit sanding is probably more than enough. But with ebony, I would definitely want to have cross hatches.
My concern with toothing a top is, especially at the ends of the wings of the bridge, you've created a groove that could be coinciding with where the end of the bridge is, that will cause the possibility of, say, a hard grain line letting go right at where you don't want it to. That would be my only concern with that.
I think that's a very legit concern. Don't go right up to the very edge, number
Okay.
one, and don't go very deep, number two.
Yeah.
It's
What would you say your depth of tooth is on the spruce? Are you like talking like 2000s, 3000s?
like if that, like it's so
Yeah.
tiny, like you're just
Yeah.
not destroying things. It's just a little scratch, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, you're not going crazy with the thing.
Subtle.
Subtle. Yeah, I can't. No way of measuring it. Sorry.
Well, should we leave some
Well,
meat
yeah,
on the
in-
bone
in-
for next time?
In our effort to keep things brief, we've gone almost 3 hours.
Did somebody say toothing? I feel like
I'm sorry to have invaded and
Oh,
mentioned
no,
all
it
this
those
is
things,
great.
Michael.
It was wonderful to have you. I am going to hit you up to join us for some future
Yeah,
topics because you've got you got a lot of tricks up your sleeve that it seems like I haven't seen before. So I'm gonna be
Got to come hang in Canada. We'll hook you
yeah,
up.
that would be great. All right.
Things are
Well,
different up
with
there.
I think with that we're gonna slam the lid on this episode. I want to thank our what.
Oh, I was just gonna say we should get everybody to issue a thanks, but you're probably getting to that. So
I wanted to thank TJ for joining us for the inauguration of our second season. Mark, I can't tell you how happy I am you'll be able to pop on. And of course,
Thanks.
Dan is there's nobody on the planet like Dan. If we could all unmute and thank our guests for joining us today, and thank Dan.
Thanks, guys.
thank you.
Thank you guys so much. That was awesome.
very much. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll see you.
Thank you, guys.
By the way,
Thanks.
next month, the episode is going to be binding repairs, starting with the letter M.
Ugh.
So we're going to have Extra Crispy is going to be joining us as our guest for that one.